Hey everyone, I'm Travis Wright, and you're listening to I'm a Fan Of, your show for music, comedy, and more. As always, if you are a musician, a comedian, or just someone that does something interesting, you can reach out to me on Instagram at TravisCanListen. You can find me on Facebook at I'm a Fan Of, or you can reach out to me through the website at I'mAFanOfPod.com. You'll notice we've changed the format a little bit. I'm going to start doing some separate music reviews. I think that I can serve the music a little better by doing that, by separating it from the actual interview. So please go, subscribe to everything. The music stuff's going to be coming in pretty shortly. For now, though, we're just going to go straight into interviews. I think that's going to make things a little cleaner. I don't know. We might change it up. It's my show. I might switch it up. I don't know. But for now, this entire episode is just going to be featuring Mr. Matt McElhone, an absolutely hilarious stand-up comic that I've had the pleasure of watching several times here in the DFW area. He's in a real sweet spot in his career where he's kind of not new anymore, but he doesn't have a ton of experience. He's really, really funny, but he's still kind of excelling. He's locally, he still has some stuff he wants to achieve, but he's also getting out on the road and doing more gigs. And he has some really great insight on where he's at in his comedy career. We also talked a lot about, his previous life in the military and what it's like to kind of, be a military, a civilian, a comic, and all the different things that come with that. He's a really interesting guy, an incredibly nice guy, and I have always enjoyed watching his stand-up comedy. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is Matt McElhone. The I'm a Fan Of podcast, music, comedy, and more. All right, Matt McElhone, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, making the drive down. I didn't realize you were from Denton.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was thinking you were from, but I didn't know that's where it was.
I was born in Georgia, and then I moved to Flower Mound when I was like 2 or 3.
Georgia.
And after I got back from the Army, I went to Denton because I always thought it was a cool town.
Yeah.
And been there for 5-6 years.
Okay, yeah. Matt's the only comic who can talk about Nazi weed and who has jokes about N-words.
Yeah. Well, when you put it like that.
And we won't say anything more than that. You'll just have to go watch a set.
It's funny to me because when you put it like that, it's almost like you're just afraid to say it, but I actually say it.
Yeah, you actually say N-words in your set, and no one knows what we're talking about until you go watch the set. So I hope you're outraged right now, but you go see a show. No, man, I really enjoy your comedy because you can tiptoe offensive things in a very likable way.
Yeah, that's like my funny fetish, I feel like. My funny fetish is getting right to the point where everyone wants to storm the stage, and then at the end them being like, oh, I guess technically he's on my side about that,
Yeah.
So
it's unique, especially around here. I mean, the only comic I was thinking of where it's almost like you're a more approachable Jesselnick in some ways.
Oh, what a compliment.
Yeah, I mean it that way. Like, it's very you're hitting those things because you don't do, from my experience, I haven't watched you live in a while, but from my experience, you don't do a lot of long form stories. You get through a lot of material in a set.
Yeah, I try. I've been trying to work on stories more, but I'm just not comfortable with them.
I like the way you do it now.
Yeah.
I think you just polish it the way you got it.
It's just a muscle I should try to work out. I'm 5 years in. I feel like that's the time where you start trying different stuff. And I've got a formula that works. So I need to, I just mentioned being in the military. I never talk about that on stage ever.
Yeah,
and
I was gonna ask you about that. Obviously, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, a few bookers and people that, run clubs and stuff are like, hey, you should talk about that more because it's something that, first of all, a lot of the population can relate to. And second of all, a lot of comics can't. And it's something that you can bring to the stage. But I think, especially initially, that's exactly why I didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than watching a comic go up there and let you know in the first 30 seconds that he served your country. And then you're like, okay, well, now it's like you're getting you know what I mean? You're getting free laughs for...
Yeah, you got to find a way to do it that doesn't feel like you're like, give me all that love and stuff right out the top. Yeah.
Looking for credit.
What did you do? You were in the Army, right?
I was in the Army, yeah. I was an air traffic controller. When I was in Afghanistan, I got attached to a flight company, and I was flying around with generals. This was a VIP mission. So we had 5 or 6 generals that we would fly around and just basically I programmed radios for them. It was like a switchboard operator in the back. With the movie Black Hawk Down, the guys in the back with the Davy Crockett's, that was my job, but it was never actual active war zones like that. It was the other side of it, which is the boring, we're going to this place, so program the radio to this frequency and then let the general know when he can make the call or make the call for him sometimes.
That's different than an air traffic controller?
Sure, yeah.
So, but you went in as an air traffic controller?
Yep, and then they were looking for air traffic controllers to do that job because there's not really an MOS in that job specifically for that, and then they just reached out to my first sergeant and was like, we need 2 people. And he sent me and one of the my NCO, actually. At the time, I was an E4, yeah.
And you didn't have any air traffic controller experience, did you?
A little bit, but the air traffic control that I did at Fort Bragg is like, it's called range control. And
no, I mean before you went to the military.
Oh, no.
And how old were you?
I signed up for the Army the day after I turned 17. I had to get parental signature, and then I left when I graduated college I graduated high school at 17 too, and then I left like 3 weeks after I graduated high school.
Did you know that air traffic controllers, like, it's like a horrible job, and don't they have like a crazy high suicide rate?
Yeah, they do. Like part of the reason that I did it was because I had someone when I was like 15 or something. My mom made me do Air Force JROTC, you know, where they like pretend you do all the military stuff without a paycheck. It was the dumbest thing in the world. But one of the recruiters that came in was saying, like, you know, here's this job where you can get 6 figures and you don't have to go to college. And at the time I was like, man, I hate school. So like, you know, but I ended up hating the job. It's just so monotonous. And I think a lot of what people say about like how it's so stressful and stuff, what I thought air traffic control was when I signed up for it was problem solving. You know, you watch like the movie Pushing 10 with Tommy Lee Jones and John Cusack, and you're like, oh man, like these are these heroes that are like making these real time situations. But the reality of it is that they face, it's the same thing 8 hours a day, saying the same stuff over and over and over again. And then if you get an emergency situation where you have to act differently, at least at the places that I went and from what I've heard, it's pretty much the same 5 emergencies every time. So it's not so much problem solving on your feet as it is like, here's this problem that I've rehearsed how to deal with 100 times.
What are the 5 emergencies?
Here's the solution. I mean, it's specific to the airport, but I mean, if you have someone coming in with an emergency, like if they have to land right away and you have 3 people already set up to land on a certain runway, you have to put them in traffic patterns to move them out of the way. And it's stuff that you rehearse 1,000 times. It's not...
Yeah, but still, I love how you're like, it's simple, it's easy. And it's like, no, you're still trying to keep things from crashing in the sky.
Yeah, I guess so. Also, Army air traffic control is a lot easier because it's mostly helicopters, and they can literally stop on a dime. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Still, man, that's exciting. When you started training for it, what did it feel intense?
Yeah, it was intense. I mean, I think the most intense part of the training was non-radar, where they simulate that like all the power goes out in the tower you're at or whatever, and you have to memorize, like, I want to say it was like 128 different points, and like by points there's like navigational aids, and there's tracks in the sky, and there's like, you know, routes, and like all these things. It's a map that you take an expo marker and you write it on, and then you erase it, and then you write it on, and then you erase it, and then you control simulated like traffic that they send you without having any visual aids. You're just in the dark, and you have to say, okay, you know, Pat 35, go to
that sounds terrible.
This oh, it's hard.
That sounds fucking awful.
Just the memorize, and I have horrible memory. But
well, and I'm just thinking, you know, you're 17, 18 when you're being trained on this.
Yeah, I was 18. I turned 18 in basic training.
And 18-year-olds are fucking idiots, you know? I mean, like, even if you're a smart 18-year-old, you're just always a little immature.
Right.
You know? You're just always kind of a little bit of an idiot.
Totally.
You know? And that's a huge amount of responsibility for a teenager.
It was an insanely high washout rate. It was definitely like one of the highest. It requires one of the highest ASVAB scores. And then even once you get in, I think it was like, I mean, you know, it wasn't Top Gun or anything, but like 60% made it, and then 40% got, you know, they turned into cooks, or they turned into aviation specialists, or just different MOSs because they didn't make it as an air traffic controller.
Yeah.
So
man, that's intense, dude. That's intense. How long were you actually in the Army?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah. I did a year at Bragg, and then a year in Afghanistan, and then back at Bragg, obviously, because that's where I was stationed. And then I asked to go to Korea. And I went to Korea for the last 2.5 years, and that was just, I mean, incredible. I love Korea so much. Like,
really?
Yeah. Current wife, I'm always like, we got to go visit. Like, I got friends that'll house us. And
wow. Dude, that's exciting. So you spoke the language and everything fairly well?
I could definitely get around.
Yeah. 2 years. That's full submersion. Like, you had to get something, right? Immersion. Yeah.
I lived off post. I could read Korean, or Hangul, it's called. I could read. I could talk literally anything I needed to get around, you know, like giving directions to a taxi, or finding the bathroom, or eating, or ordering food, stuff like that. But I mean, I wouldn't say I was fluent. You know?
How are Koreans towards military?
It really depends. It's like 2 political parties that have completely opposite views on that. Like, some of them are like, oh, you guys saved us. And then other ones, like, there were a few dicey situations where, you know, me or my friends were getting baited into fights. And then there's someone in the corner with the camera held up. But that's just a sect of the population. It's like anywhere. The whole country doesn't agree.
I mean, that can literally happen here too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, that's wild. You think you will move over there ever?
Nah, not move, but I definitely want to go visit.
You wouldn't move just for a year or two?
No.
Do some comedy in Korea?
No, I did comedy in Korea. That's where I started. Yeah. I always say that I started in Denton and that I've been doing it for 5 years. It'll be 5 years in October. But the truth is that the last 4 months I was in the Army, I found on Facebook a little stand-up soul, and they had like one open mic a week and like 2 shows a month. And I did that for like 3 or 4 months. And then when I got home, my wife at the time, my first wife, was not about that life. So I did like 2 or 3 years in between. And then when the divorce happened, I was like, what's going to make me get out of this depression? What's going to make me get off this couch? It's like, well, I used to love doing stand-up. So I started doing it again. And I just count that as my, 5 years.
What was your first experience with stand-up in Korea?
Oh, man, I was holding a sheet of paper that I
These
had
for Americans?
physically written. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The expat community over there is so large because there's a law in Korea that in order to speak English, you have to be English as a first language. You have to fluently speak English and come from. So like there's a lot of Australians and British people and Americans, and there's entire bars, they call them Western bars, that are just like, going to 2 chucks here. It's like literally just a bar of all white people. You know what I mean? Like it's completely normal. So the stand-up scene was mostly that. There would be like one table of Koreans every once in a while, but it was almost all expats, military.
Do you remember that first set still?
Yeah, man. It was.
Was it exciting or was it terrible? Or?
It was terrible. It was terrifying. And I think after about a month, they booked me on one of their showcases, especially because they knew that I was going to leave soon, that I was going to get out of the Army and I was going to come back to the States. So they wanted to give me that opportunity. And I filmed that, and it was on my YouTube for a long time. I made it private now, but it's kind of, I always say it was my first show, and that's true. I did like 3 or 4 open mics before that, but it's wild to think of my memory of my first open mic, like I said, with that sheet of paper that's literally like shaking in front of me as I'm trying to read it, to that first show. I felt like I picked it up kind of fast. You know what I mean? I got comfortable quick. It's a big difference. It was also a much bigger audience, which bigger audience, like it sounds like it would be harder, but it's so much easier.
Yeah, I imagine the laughs come a little easier because everybody feels like they can laugh a little more. And I mean, do you think that, going to Afghanistan, working as an air traffic controller and all that, you just have a higher tolerance for stress?
Stress, yeah.
It gets a little easier to jump on stage?
I got gray hairs at 30, so obviously there's some, it's going somewhere. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do definitely tend to like getting lubed up a little bit with alcohol. I don't, especially not on shows. I'm not performing completely blackout drunk or anything like that, but I don't like doing it sober. And part of that is the nerves, you know what I mean? I got anxiety and it's a lot easier to lube up with a little alcohol and then go on.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I recently got anxiety, got diagnosed with it a couple years ago, I guess. And it's like, I thought that stuff was such bullshit.
Right.
Until you start experiencing it and you're like, oh my God, this is like, you feel like I'm going to fucking die. I'm going to die right now.
For nothing, too.
For nothing.
For sitting at a light and you realize you can't get around the cars in front of you. It's like, what if something happens behind me? I'm stuck. You know?
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Have you had a panic attack on stage before?
No. I think there's something almost therapeutic for me about it because, I have the microphone, I'm in control. I've definitely bombed my ass off or forgotten jokes, but it's never gotten to the point where I've just like lost it and had that feeling in my chest like I've had off stage a few times,
Yeah.
So
that's intense, man. You talked about your first wife, and we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
No, it's fine.
But didn't you say you went through like somewhat of a nasty divorce or something?
No,
I can't remember.
She was like, I think what you're probably thinking of, she had an affair almost the whole time I was in Afghanistan, and I didn't find out about it until we were in Korea together.
I think that's what it was. Because
we tried to make it work.
Wasn't this in like an old Kill Tony set or something?
Yes,
That's what it was. I was trying to find that today. What show was that? What episode was that?
It was the one in Dallas from maybe 4 years ago. I couldn't tell you the number or anything.
I was trying to find it and I couldn't. But yeah, that's wild, man.
It's funny. Tony Hinchcliffe was like, well, we're not really getting a lot out of you, so we're going to move on. And the comments on that YouTube video are like, he just said that he was like signing adoption paperwork for a kid that wasn't his.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Oh my God, you were about to adopt a kid that wasn't yours?
I was signing the ability for someone else to adopt it.
That's what it was.
Because her and I were officially married, so the kid was officially mine, but I hadn't even seen her in like a year. So,
but this wasn't your kid, right?
We just took like 3 years to get divorced. Just lazy and like there wasn't a lot of. We didn't have a lot of assets. You know what I mean? So it was like, I'm going to keep my car. You
had
keep
like
your
a ton
car.
of distance between you or something, wasn't it?
She moved to Michigan. Yeah. So it was just, and then once I started dating Devin, my current wife, about a year and a half, 2 years into that, she was like, listen, I could see us getting married someday, and I don't want you to like twiddle your thumbs on getting a divorce. And then, so she kind of pushed me to get the divorce. It was pretty easy. It was like, everyone talks about how hard it is. It's hard if you have money. If you don't have money, then you got to get together $250 and sign some papers, and it's over. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
So,
Still, man, like that didn't just gut you whenever it was all going down.
Yeah, it did. It did. And that's part of what I was saying. I needed comedy, was something to get off the couch. And I just went around to the, when I started doing it in Korea, it sounds dumb, but like I was listening to Kill Tony, and it just blew my mind that open mics were even a thing. Because since I was little, my mom really liked stand-up comedy, and I would watch like Eddie Izzard and Chris Rock and stuff with her. And I just thought that those people one day took the stage and they were just that funny, and they sold out Madison Square Garden, and that was it. And that's how it worked. It just never even occurred to me that like, no, you suck, and you have to suck for a few years, and then you build from there.
That's the same experience I had. I started going to shows, at Hyenas Dallas, and I was like, oh, these are like massive headliners from somewhere probably. Like it's all huge famous people that come to these clubs. And then you start slowly realizing, like, I'd go to multiple shows and you'd see the same MC, the same feature, and you're like, wow, they fly this guy out a lot. Like,
Yeah.
And then you start piecing it together and you're like, oh, there's this. And the first open mic that I went to go watch was that Wednesday night Hyenas one. And you see 70, 80 comics and you're like, oh my God. And that's when my eyes really got open to kind of the whole culture of like just how much it takes.
The fact
to get
that there's levels
good.
to it.
Yeah. And it gave me a whole new respect for, when you hear a really funny joke at a bigger show, how much effort went in to get that joke.
How many times it took until that became a good joke.
God.
Yeah.
Then I got obsessed with going to open mics for a little while. Just different ones, and you'd
Did
start.
you do it? I haven't seen you do comedy.
No. I signed
Just
up.
a fan.
I signed up for one Kill Tony in Fort Worth when they came through, just because the friends I was with, we all secretly like rehearsed a minute, and we were like, we got a little drunk beforehand,
and
we
they
were
were
like,
fans too.
Yeah, they were fans of the
Nice.
show, and we were like, oh, we'll all sign up, And then as soon as he got up there, I was like, oh God, please don't call, please don't call me.
You couldn't even focus on the show.
Well, it was kind of a rush because while someone was on stage, you were relaxed, you were enjoying everything, but as soon as his hand went into that bucket, you were just like,
You start
freaking
sweating
out.
buckets.
Oh, big time. And it was so much, that whole show, man. I kind of miss it in that form. It's fine that he's moved to Austin and everything's going well for him, but I do miss having like Jeremiah Watkins, Joel Jimenez, those guys on the
band.
stage with them. I thought that just added so much. So I'm really happy I went to those Fort Worth shows when they were in town and like got to see it in person before it changed.
Right. Do you still keep up with it? Do you still listen to a
little
lot of
bit?
episodes?
Yeah. It's like such a commitment, and now I'm listening to so many other things, but it's fine. I think because I liked that previous version of it, it's just never as good to me now. But I know they're like wildly successful. It's still a great show.
Did you ever go back and listen to the ones before that when it was like Iron Patriot and it was like
no.
Yeah, I think that Jeremiah Watkins, Joel Jimenez, when the band, I think that was the golden era. Like before that kind of sucked. Since that, you know what I mean? I don't want to trash one of the most probably the most successful live podcasts in the world, but I don't think it's as good as it was.
No, I think so. I started listening maybe a couple episodes before. There was another guy in the band with Jeremiah Watkins and them. Pat Reagan.
Yeah, Pat Reagan. Yeah.
So I think I listened to a couple episodes with him, and then he stepped out or whatever happened there, and then I just kind of listened to that whole iteration until they came to Austin. And yeah, to me that was like, I'm sure everybody likes their own version of it, but to me that was the version,
right?
Because I think when Tony and Red Band get a little wild, Jeremiah and Joel were able to kind of like keep it reined in a little bit. Like you had that nice point
perfect
counterpoint.
chemistry.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. But,
I do think it's funny how in the beginning when it was, the Iron Patriot and everything before the band, it really was a show where they were giving advice to comics.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's literally just a roast. It's like, here, you do your minute, and then the three of us will roast the shit out of you and maybe ask you some questions and then tell you like, okay, there's something there that you could work on. Yeah. But in the beginning it was like literally just small stuff, like put the microphone behind you when you take the stage. When was the last time you heard them say that?
Well, and I think that's what it is. There's something about catching something where it's not brand new, but it's not huge yet.
Right.
And that's what it was, because
Fringe.
Yeah, because for all the reasons people cannot like Tony Hinchcliffe, like that era of his show that I was listening to, you really learned like he loved comedy, and if you were trying hard to be good at it, he would give you solid advice. He would help you out. He like you can tell he loves it, and he would really only get annoyed by people who were, like disrespecting comedy.
Yeah.
Basically, like you didn't even have to be good. You could suck. It could be
give it an effort.
Yeah, and like if you took it at all seriously, they were going to give you something to work with, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, this guy like. As bad as he can be that good.
Right.
So I really love that. It gave me a lot of respect for him, knowing, because, he would drop some knowledge about, what it might take for you to improve something, right? And then he'd just turn around and destroy someone else. It was brutal.
and especially for us being in Dallas as opposed to LA or something, like it's a lot of the blind leading the blind, and like the people that we get to look up to are like, Dave Little or J.R. Brower or local headliners like Steve Hurst, but they're not necessarily going to get down in the muck and talk to us and say like, hey, this is what you need to improve on. So even just being able to watch them tell somebody else was such I think a game changer, but I also think in a lot of ways, like these mics are probably more crowded than ever because of that. You know what I mean? Like
that show was a huge reason that I wanted to start watching open mics and why I wanted to start this podcast.
Right.
Because originally,
how long's it been going?
So I started just before the pandemic in 2019, and then like all of 2020 I couldn't do anything. So I say about 3 years now, about 2 to 3 years, I guess. That started because there's I won't say their name because they were talking a bunch of shit about Tony Hinchcliffe, but there's a comic that's fairly successful around here, and I ran into them at the dog park, and I was like, have you heard of this Kill Tony show? And they were like, yeah, it's just some like asshole comic talking shit about people all the time. They fucking suck. They're not good. And I was like, all right, well, I'll check it out anyway. And I fell in love with it, man. I thought it was great. And like I said, that led me to the Hyenas open mic, which that led me to the Dallas Comedy Club open mic. What do we have now, club or house? We have Dallas Comedy Club now. It led me to the Dallas Comedy House mic when it was the older location. And from there, that just turned into like, oh, now there's these bar open mics and stuff. And, it's like one of my favorites to go watch is the Mad Hatter in Fort Worth. That place is awesome. And it's totally different than watching a club show.
I haven't been since Colton left. When Colton went to Austin, I haven't been once. I got to go again.
It's he moved to Austin?
Okay. About a month, maybe 2 months ago. Jordan Mack is running that mic now. I got to go.
Well, that spot, that little bar.
I love it.
It's got it's just like that little, for people who don't know, it's like a little shotgun bar.
Yeah, perfect word.
Yeah, and the stage is tiny, and the bar is loud, and it's like, so when I feel like when a comic gets a laugh there, they know like, oh, I've earned that. Yeah, it's a cool spot.
It's a great place to learn how to get their attention, because like you can have a fantastic set, but if they're talking and you don't do anything to get their attention, you know what I mean? If you don't start with a survey or a round of applause or a moment of silence, they're never going to hear your first joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
what's kind of your average show right now? Because I have a really hard time placing kind of where you are in your comedy journey here.
Well, traveling with Steve Hurst has been really fantastic for me. I mean, I've been to Vegas and Milwaukee and all these cool places with him. We're coming up. We're going to Tyler. We're going to Longview. Like New Year's Eve, we're going to Colorado Springs. But that's where like the majority of my really cool experiences are, and it's because he's headlining and they're bringing him, and he says, "Hey, can I bring my buddy along?" And he'll open for me. Yeah, and I get to do that. Everything else right now, for the most part, is bar shows. You know what I mean? That's
why I was asking, because I feel like you're in this interesting zone where locally you're still kind of scrapping to get some of this club work. And then I'm traveling.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
But you're getting, because I'm like, well, hold on, he's getting out of town, he's doing this stuff, and then it's like, I know the game that you guys have to play to try to get on some of these club shows and work through their systems and all that's cool, but it's like, it's just really odd how it all works,
Yeah, and I also admittedly have a really bad problem with swallowing my pride and asking for opportunities. Like there are people out there, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve the spots they get, but there are people out there that hear about a show and then they DM the person, or they hear about a show and they go up to the person and they say, I've one time actually, because Pong Dong was running those topical shows. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's a really cool
Yeah.
muscle to flex. I would like to, write material and do it that day. That's the only time I've ever asked for a spot. And I know that it would be better for my career if I swallowed my pride and just said, hey, I really think I'm ready. Can I do this opportunity? But I've never even asked Perio for, he knows I want it. He knows that I'm working for it. And if he thinks I'm ready, then he'll give it to me.
What do you think keeps you from just asking?
I
Because the worst thing someone could say is, it's not a good fit.
just feel like it looks thirsty. I don't know.
But if you don't ask,
I'm in my own way. I recognize that I should ask. I just can't even bring maybe it's the anxiety we talked about earlier. You know what I mean?
If you don't ask, what in your mind, how do you see the scenario playing out where you will get the work without asking?
I get work sometimes and people just message me and ask me. I mean, that's a great feeling, My favorite thing is when someone says, hey, I don't know if this is big enough profile for you. They don't say it in that many words, but the Wichita Falls people, for some reason, I guess because they see the post about me traveling, they I don't know, treat me like I'm fucking borderline famous or something.
As they should. No, I'm just kidding.
And, but yeah, those dudes will message me and be like, hey man, we can only give you about $75 and I know it's a long drive, but blah, blah, blah. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, I'll fucking be there. Give me 2 drink tickets. I'm down. I mean, don't tell them that. But
Right.
I mean?
What he means is he needs $400. No, I think I bet you and the people who would like you to be on shows with them, I bet y'all are both thinking the same thing.
Maybe.
Because just like those people are like, hey, do you think you could do this? There's probably a lot of people locally who are like, he's getting all this other work. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to bother him. I don't want to look like I'm begging or something. I bet you guys do the same shit to each other.
Probably.
And then if you just shoot a DM out, they're probably just like, yeah, man, we were waiting to hit you up too or something.
Yeah.
I bet it's more of that than you realize.
I think I'd rather do it in person than DMing though. Something about DMing feels kind of, I don't know, just worse. In person, it's like, hey man, I see you're doing that show. And it's kind of a casual conversation.
Ooh, I would hate it in person. To me, I think that's...
See, I would hate to be left on red.
I'm okay
it's
with
not
that.
about... Really? Oh, dude. If they wrote back and said, we don't think you're ready, I'd be like, all right, well, that sucks. If they left me on red, I'd be like, why did I fucking mess
Well, anybody
this
who leaves you on red when you're asking about a professional thing, fuck them anyway, right?
True.
Because it's too easy to just be like, we'll let you know if something comes along that fits,
Right.
and all right, cool, whatever.
Yeah, that was your polite way of saying I'm not...
Yeah,
your material.
But no, to me, the in-person, and I don't do comedy shows or anything, but to me, the in-person thing, I would feel like that's the same as if I just called you instead of texting you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why the fuck is this person calling me?
Right. Well,
but I don't know.
I'm acting like I'd prefer. I'm saying I should do one of those two things, and I would prefer to start doing but I haven't done that either, so I don't know why I'm acting
I think you just get really weird.
It's so much easier.
You just get really weird with it, and you just walk up to them, and you're just like, hey, I want to be on your show. Just make it super awkward. And you're just like, okay, man, thanks. I served our country.
You know what I have done that's kind of close to that is I've gone to other people's shows and then just been there, and they've been like, hey, thanks a lot for coming out. I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool.
I think that's a smart move.
And then it's just kind of natural for them to be like, would you like to get on the next one that we do?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I used to do that when I played music. We'd go watch other bands play, and we were secretly hoping they'd put us on another show with them at some point.
Yeah.
I think that's a great.
You probably
plan.
like the bands anyways. You're a huge music fan.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, honestly, man, I'm like a music slut. There's only a few things that I really, really hate.
Right.
Because it's kind of like comedy. It's like once you play music, you know the effort it takes to make good music.
Right.
And so then if it's, I don't know. I'm still picky, but it's like when something's good, despite maybe a bad recording or something. It's like you can see past all that.
You can respect stuff even if you don't personally like it.
Exactly. Yeah. You can go that's not for me, but other people are really going to love that.
Totally.
But I mean, everything I play on this show, I genuinely like.
I really liked. Okay, so I listened to Mikey B's episode, and then before that was the Butt Shakers. I liked that so much. It reminded me of Galactic.
The
I'm
Butt
sure
Shakers?
you're familiar with Galactic. Yeah.
Okay.
Just very kind of groovy jazz with
Dude. Super cool band.
Yeah, I only listened to the ones that you had on the podcast, but I remember thinking okay, next time I'm in a Galactic mood, instead I'm going to put on the Butt Shakers.
I was reading more about it. That lead singer, she's from America, but I think the band's in France, and I didn't realize it when I played them on the episode.
Oh, wow.
And so she's like an American in France playing this music, I think.
That's cool.
It's pretty fucking
cool.
cool.
The Wee Beasties must be local, right? Because in that song, he said something about the Dallas Cops.
Wee Beasties are from Denton, actually. They're in your neck of the woods.
Okay, that's why I've heard that name.
They're going to be playing a show
music.
They're going to be playing a show in September at Rubber Gloves.
Okay.
You could go to that show.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to drive up and go to that show if my wife will let me.
Yeah, I might meet you there.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the music, the comedy stuff. It's all the same. Like I've talked about it so much on the show with DFW, everything surrounding it. It's like there's so much of it that's good.
Right.
It's just good, man.
My neighbor, literally right next door, they're super antisocial. So I talk to the neighbors on my left like all the time, and then the neighbors on the right, I'll go up and be like, "Hey, man, I saw that your whatever stroller is out there. Is that for the trash, or like, can we take it? We're having a baby soon, like blah blah blah." And they're just kind of like, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to talk at all. But they must have a jam band or something. Like twice a week, I hear them in there, and it sounds fucking good. And I know that he's not like a social person, and I don't want to be weird, but I'm also like, you guys got a show sometime soon? Like, I'd love to come out and watch my neighbor.
I bet he'd fucking love that. If you knocked on the door and were like, "Do you have a show soon?"
Yeah, he just
fucking
seems
love it.
so fucking antisocial. Like,
or he swings the door open. He's like, "I don't ever play for anyone. Leave me alone."
I'll turn it down.
Yeah. First of all, that's a very Denton thing. Like my neighbor's jamming over there.
Yeah.
One of the bands that I was in, the guy who led the band, he lived in Denton, and so I would drive up there to rehearse. And he's in like a small apartment, and he's on the first floor. There's apartments above him, and we would just set up in one of his bedrooms, like full drum kit, amps, bass amps, guitar amps,
right,
everything, man. And I was like, "Are your neighbors cool?" They're like, "Yeah, man, they don't care at all, man. They love it." And sure enough, his neighbor came down one day, and he's just like drinking a beer, smoking a joint, and he's like, "Yeah, man, the practice is sounding good."
That's
like,
so cool.
I know, it's very Denton. Because, I mean, you try that shit in Dallas. It's like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Everyone says Denton's a wannabe Austin. I don't even think that's accurate, man. I think Denton is like a cooler Austin because everyone's way more not in their own shit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I've gone on record multiple times saying I think Austin is pretty overrated.
It's so overrated. And especially now, it's so dirty. There's such a bad homeless problem. It's like,
fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's
overpriced.
Okay. Denton, I've realized, like, I didn't grow up in Dallas. We moved to Dallas. But I'm turning into that Dallas snob where it's like, I like my town. I like my stuff.
I like my $7 Lone Stars.
I have like a little bit of a snobby expectation. I need things to be a little shinier, And, but Denton, I can get along with Denton fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all right up there. I've had a lot of, like when I was younger, a lot of fun nights where you go up and there's like 50 cent well drink nights at those bars, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, even to this day, you can still get, it's Lone Star, but you can still get $3 beers.
Dude, I'm down with that.
Or Montucky's or PBRs, and that doesn't happen outside of Denton. Yeah, I love Denton. You know what I tell a lot of people when I'm out of town? Like if I go to Colorado Springs, say, and we get into town a few days early, so I go to the open mic, and the comics there are like, "What's the Dallas scene like?" My favorite thing to tell everyone, this is like my big flex about why DFW is such a great comedy scene, is because Denton's liberal, right? Mm-hmm. And then Dallas is a toss-up, and Fort Worth is conservative. Mm-hmm. And most of us do all three of those audiences all the time, especially like in my first year when I was doing like 10 to 15 open mics a week. It was really cool to do a Denton mic, and then that same night drive to Dallas, and then that same night drive to Fort Worth. And that's like an underrated experience because they are so vastly different audiences, and then you get a chance to perform in front of all three of those types. Nowadays, unfortunately, in Denton, there's only Sundays. There's 2 mics on Sunday, and that's it. There's no more.
What are the mics in Denton?
Now it's the Bearded Monk and Dusty's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denton needs more of that. I don't know what it's going to take, but Denton,
Killers wants to open a mic. I just don't want to run it, and there are no Denton comics left. They've all moved out. Tony Casillas is on to way bigger things.
Yeah.
Javoris doesn't have a car, but he still runs the Bearded Monk.
Yeah, and the Brave Boys were kind of leading a lot of that up there, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they stopped when the pandemic hit, and I don't think they've ever started it back up. Yeah, somebody needs to come in there. I mean, I think Denton could handle its own club.
Yeah.
I don't think it just needs an open mic. Like, I think there could be a comedy club up there.
I wanted Free Play to turn into a comedy. Well, now it's Free Play.
Yeah.
It was at the Abbey Underground, and then it became the Lion and the Crown, and then it was vacant for like 3 years. But like, how many world famous comedy stores are in basements?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Like, it would have been so cool to walk downstairs, even if it was another Hyenas. If it was Hyenas Denton, you know.
Is J&J's Pizza, do they still have that basement down there?
So J&J's closed about a year ago. The place has reopened as Graffiti Pasta, and I'm on a show there October 9th. I think it's the first one. But they've kept the basement pretty much the same. I'm told even that, like, you know, that Guadalupe painting that's behind the stage, I'm told that's still there. That it's like completely unchanged.
Yeah, that town needs something. Like, I have Denton listeners, a lot of them, and it's like, somebody needs to figure out who's got the uncle or the relative with the money and open one up. Because, yeah, it used to just be like the college students around there. But now everything around Denton has exploded, all those little towns and everything. And it's far enough away from Dallas and Fort Worth. You're not going to be taking any business from anybody. You're just going to be improving.
None of the big clubs are going to be upset.
No.
They're not going to try and take you down.
No. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. You know, like, great for Tony Casillas. He's having good things come his way. And he was one of the people that was kind of keeping that stuff going up there.
I mean, if you sit down and think about it for a second, Spencer Cilio, Daniel Magden, Nick Fields, Colton Jones, all of those people are on to bigger and better things, and I'm forgetting tons of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Quentin J. or Mike Martin. His real name is Mike Martin.
Okay.
But they've all moved. They don't live in Denton anymore, and half the reason that we had such a big scene in Denton was because all those guys lived there, so you could run an open mic on a Thursday and know that more than 3 people were going to sign up.
Yeah, and the only reason they're moving is they have to go where there's places to perform.
When the pandemic started, it all shut down, and other places opened back up before Denton did. And yeah, someone's just got to do it, and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
The only reason we get people out on Sundays is because it's 2 mics within walking distance of each other, and so those 2 mics kind of promote for each other, because they're like, hey, yeah, come do Bearded Monk, and then afterwards you can go do 10 minutes at Dusty's.
Yeah.
And then the Dusty's host is like, why did you just get here now? Don't you know you could have gone to the Bearded Monk beforehand? And that's
cool.
Yeah, that's our way of trying to get Dallas and Fort Worth comics back.
Yeah.
But
It's tough, man. Like, the open mics I've watched, it seems like a nightmare trying to run one.
Oh, man, the amount of stress. Half the time they don't even have their own amp, so you're like borrowing, like, hey man, can I meet you in the Walmart parking lot? Like, throw the stuff in the trunk.
Well, and, you know, no offense to you guys, but it's like, comics are doing comedy for a reason, and it's not because they're all punctual and great communicators.
Right.
Like,
yeah, totally.
You're trying to run a list of them and keep everything on the rails. It's tough, man. It's tough. Yeah. Did you watch many open mics before you decided to go to one, or did
I
you
went
just
to
go?
one. I went to one and saw what it was about, and then for a week I literally just like wrote in a notebook. Nowadays, like, honestly, since I started doing it back in the States, I don't think I've put literal physical pen to paper. Like, I'll jot something down in the notes section or send out a tweet to remember, like, I got to try that on stage. But I spent like that whole week just every day, every like little break I had at work, and then when I was at home and everything, writing down what I was going to do. I don't like that page, rewriting it. And I actually framed that paper that I was talking about,
no
shaking.
shit.
Yeah, in my office at home, I have that framed, and then I have a big map of the United States that somebody left at our house when we bought our house. They left it in one of the closets. So I hung it up on the wall in the office, and now I put like little pins in every city that I've been
badass.
to. Yeah.
Do you have a pin in South Korea?
No, because it's the United States map. For a second, I was like,
it's
why
just
wouldn't
United
I?
States.
But yeah,
okay,
it's just the United States.
Well, you need to like just put it way over on the wall, like
Yeah, right by the light switch. Yeah.
So you like writing just in your head now?
Yeah, I it's really just, I don't want to call it laziness. It sounds so stupid, but I kind of think the jokes that are worth remembering will be remembered. You know, like writing everything down. And I think some people wear it as a badge of honor, but like, I'm certainly not talking trash about TJ Riggio. I love him, and I think he's like very prolific. He's always got new stuff, but he'll show you his stack of notebooks that's like, 6 feet off the table. And you're like, wow, that's incredible. How much of that have you actually done on stage? And it's like, oh, not all of it. And it's like, yeah, probably like a small percentage of it. And like, just because I'm writing something down doesn't mean I think it's going to work. If I think of something in the shower and then I mull it over for 2 weeks and then I'm not excited about taking it on stage, then I'm just not going to take it on stage. What was that?
Sorry, we're in Deep Ellum. That's some cool car driving by right now, blasting music. We're recording on what is today? What's the holiday? Fuck.
Labor Day.
Labor Day. Thank you. Yeah. So it's like,
I thought it was coming through internally. I thought you were like phasing up.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, we're done. Turn the music up.
So anyways, this story's going nowhere.
Yeah, had a great time chatting with you, man. Thank you. No, I'm surprised we haven't had, usually this time of night, you get like the the group of like 50 or 60 like dirt bikes and four wheelers
Biker
that are
gang,
that are like doing the wheelies down the street and stuff. It's that Deep Ellum charm.
Have you been doing it here since you started the podcast? This is a really cool studio,
I
by
love
the way.
it, man. Yeah, the very first episode, because I used to have my friend Nathan helping me out, and then he just kind of didn't want to do podcast stuff anymore, which is fine. But we tried this studio that he had, which was really cool. I really liked it a lot. It was like a legit music recording studio, but it was just the hassle of he was sharing that studio with other people, so it's like, how do you book the space and all this without stepping on toes, and it's kind of difficult. So we did the very first one with Tony Casillas and Daniel Magnan at that spot, and then after that I found this place and we started doing it here, and I like it. But I already want to get I already want to find something that I can make my own,
right?
You know what I mean? But all that costs money, so we're gonna stay here for now.
Paul Smith and I have been talking about doing a paranormal podcast, and we always talk about it. We always say we're going to do it, and then something happens, or we're just both lazy, or the schedules don't work out. And
I would like the pairing of both of y'all doing that, though.
It's gotten to the point where it's been like 6 months since we had the revelation that we were going to do this, and then we make an excuse every time. And I think both of us, without saying it to each other, are like, this is never going to happen, is it? Because we're just always making excuses. Well, but we're both very into ghosts, and we're both very into aliens. And
have y'all both had ghost experiences?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I won't.
Do you want to
share
share
his.
yours?
Sure, man. So in order to tell this story, I first have to say, I did not grow up with money, right? I didn't know my father growing up. I grew up with my mom, and we lived with my grandparents. So I don't want this to sound like, I was a spoiled rich kid. But my mom was an absolute travel junkie. She worked for American Airlines up until 9/11. And as a travel junkie, she was horrible with credit cards, which I've kind of inherited a little bit. And she would take us on these vacations, these travel destinations for spring break and summer and all the time. And then she would get back and start paying off the credit card until it got to the point where she could afford another trip. And then we'd go on another trip and she maxed out all those credit cards. So I always feel the need to say that because by the time I was in the Army, I had been to, I think, over 20 countries.
Jesus.
Yeah, and some of them multiple times. I think I've been to England 5 times, and I've been to Ireland a few times, 3 or 4 times. I've been to France twice, all these places that, a lot of people will never get to see. I was lucky enough to see because my mom, that was her addiction. That was her biggest hobby.
She had free miles and didn't care about debt.
Exactly, yeah. And living with the grandparents, it was. Anyways, so we were staying at this castle on the border of Wales in England, in England, and the town was called Wells.
I see why you prefaced it, because you're like, we were at the castle. They had just dropped us off.
Right. So we stayed at this castle that turned into a hostel, a youth hostel. And my mom and us stayed there. She wanted to stay there because it was a historic place, not just because it was cheap. But we stayed in this room where there were 3 bunk beds. It was me, my mom, and my little brother. And we stayed in the room. She bought out all 3 of the bunk beds, so she just paid double or whatever, so that it was just us and we could lock the door and everything was fine. And it was St. Patrick's Day, and my mom took me to the Irish pub that, I don't think it was an Irish pub, it was just a pub that was down the street, and we were there drinking for St. Patrick's Day, and they don't care if you drink there. I think I was 14 or 15, and I was drinking with my mom. She let me drink back then anyways, and we went to the hostel, to the room, went to sleep, shut the doors, and I decided I was going to sneak out and go back to the pub because I knew that they were letting me drink, and I was like, I'll just go down there and party. It was walking distance, this will be fun. And I went to sneak out, and I was waiting in bed for the right opportunity, and I kept hearing footsteps up and down the hallway, and I was like, damn, well, I don't want to leave when someone's there, but it seemed like someone was just pacing up and down the hallway, they had something to walk out, and they were stressed or whatever, and it felt like I was waiting there, just laying there waiting to be able to sneak out for 45 minutes to an hour. And finally I was like, all right, I'm just going to go because this person is apparently never going to stop. And I opened the door, and I opened the door as I timed it so that the footsteps were walking past, and I was hoping I would just sneak out behind them. They wouldn't even hear me or turn around. I was going to be quiet. But I opened the door and there was nobody there. And I looked around and I got really freaked out. And then I turned around to go back inside, and this part is so stupid and cliche, and I know how dumb I sound when I say it, but I literally, it turned into running footsteps, and I felt a cold breeze on my neck.
Yeah.
And I closed the door, and I laid in the fetal position, and I don't think I got like a wink of sleep. It just freaked me out so bad. And my mom, for years, I didn't tell her that she was like spot on, but my mom was like, you must have seen a ghost that night. And I was like, no, I didn't see a ghost or anything.
Yeah.
She's like, you were so ready to leave. Like when we woke up, you had like packed your luggage, and you were ready to leave, blah, blah, blah. And we went downstairs, and the bellhop lady said something along the lines of like, you know, how was your stay in Isabella's room? And my mom was like, why do you call it Isabella's room? And she's like, well, that's where the princess stayed, and the prince. This part's even worse. Everybody has a similar situation with footsteps. Apparently, she was like a bad girl and she got pregnant or something, and they put guards outside her room, and the guards would patrol her rooms so that she couldn't leave, and then she hung herself in that room. And I know it sounds so stupid and cliche, like I wrote it when I was 14, but it's 100%. I don't even like telling. I mean, obviously, I just told it on your podcast.
Yeah.
But I fucking feel so dumb when I tell the story because it's so like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah.
I've had a couple ghost stories told on this podcast. Don't worry.
Do you have any ghost stories? Do you believe in it, or are you like, oh my God, what a kook? Why did I have you on?
When I was younger, I believed in it more.
Yeah.
And then
What's funny is I'm an atheist, and I think I was kind of an atheist at that time. Still terrified of ghosts. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, so the more I got into astronomy, you know, as a hobby, I was thinking like, you know, all this ghost shit is just stupid. Like there's a science that we don't understand or something. There's, you know, whatever, or you're tricking yourself, you know, whatever. But then I do wonder, you know, like there's studies that are trying to figure out how like people that believe like objects and places kind of hold memories, right? And you know, the more you like, and when I say learn, it's very loose because I'm not like an academic person for astronomy, obviously. But
Right.
like as a hobbyist, when you hear smarter people talk about all these different things that we don't know about physics yet and all this, it's like, man, what if these places do hold on to something?
it's just an energy.
And it's not necessarily a ghost, or
Yeah.
you know. And then also we know for a fact that there are multiple dimensions that we're not able to access. So it's like maybe when you die, you're in another dimension, and you're experiencing that person crossing over a little bit in dimensions. You know, maybe not like a
just a little
ghost.
glitch in the matrix, and you see that. Or,
Yeah, and then the other thing is, you know, nobody really understands time that well, right? Like people are still doing all these studies to try to figure out, is time something that is like you don't have free will? Everything we're doing was already set in stone in time, and we're just living out little slices of it, you know, in an endless loop.
do you
or
prefer
something.
that idea? Or?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I just like watching the you know, the Neil deGrasse Tyson documentaries about it,
Yeah.
right? You know. But if that were the case, like if time is just this fixed thing, it's like your time could just be crossing over with her time. You know, maybe you're hearing those guards because these planes are just crossing.
Right.
You know?
I mean,
I don't know. Shit's weird. But I did have a house whenever I was when I was about to start my freshman year of high school. My parents were divorced, and my mom bought this house. She didn't have a lot of money. We grew up. I always say we grew up poor. Like we had clothes and food, but we didn't have, you know, extras, right? So that level of poor. And she got this house. It was on 5 acres of land, and she got a deal on it somehow. And then we later found out she got a deal because the guy shot his head off with a shotgun.
oh wow.
And he was kind of a loner. He was a Polish guy. And
Is this one of the states where they have to disclose that to you? Do you know?
I don't remember if they had to.
Yeah,
but,
go on. Sorry.
But I know for a fact the reason my mom told us is because she took the master bedroom of this house, and the carpet was cut out, and then there was still like,
oh wow.
there was still like not like shrapnel, but like the indents of, you know, shotgun pellets and debris, and
Yeah. Wow.
and so he had killed himself. He was kind of a loner, so he was there for a while before somebody found him. So it was like, we'll cut all this stuff out before we sell the house because it's just, you know, really bad. And the way this house was set up, you came in through the living room, then you could immediately go right to the kitchen. So it, you know what? It almost looked like two balls and a shaft, right? There was the balls were the living room and the kitchen, and then there was a long hallway off of those that all the bedrooms were off of.
Right,
And
okay.
it was like a 5 or 6 bedroom house. The way this thing was, I mean, it was a real shitty house, but it was big. And my bedroom was at the end of that long hallway, And it's out kind of in the country, so it's very dark. And at the end of that hall was also a door back to outside. And it was one of those like standard doors where there's kind of like a window on the upper half. And so in the middle of the night when you go to get a drink of water out of the kitchen or something, it's like you look down that long hallway and all you see is like the window at the end and the moonlight coming through, and you just get in your own fucking head. But you'd be in there sometimes and you'd just be like,
feel like you're not alone.
Yeah, you just be like, man, I'm just going to fucking go outside. This place feels weird right now. And you just go play outside for a little while or do something,
Right.
And so no ever like real experience happened. I mean, my sister and some other people claim that like some pictures fell off the wall and all this kind of stuff. I never saw that. But they swore up and down they were having experiences there.
Yeah.
I
mean,
I don't know. But it's like
seems like if anything is going to leave an energy on a place, blowing your brains out might do it.
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Like,
because I
oh, you didn't get to why she told you that.
She told me because we were like, what the fuck's up with this room?
Okay,
we didn't
like,
say it that way.
Why are there indents?
And she's like, so the night before I started my first day of school as a freshman, she's like, oh yeah, someone killed themselves here. Jeez. And he had like, there were still like clothes in the closet.
And she's just cool with it.
She was wearing some of his jackets.
I don't even like when my wife buys me something from the thrift store. I'm like, I don't know who died in this.
She does not give a shit about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he was like a military guy for Poland, I guess, and he had like some cool camo jackets in there and stuff. And she was like, we came home and she's like wearing one. It's like, God damn it!
Your mom's braver than me.
Oh yeah. Well, she's just one of those where she's like, well, he's dead. He's not going to use it. And it's like, oh God. Yeah, my wife. It's like she used to do it. She would buy old things, from an estate sale or something, and then she would be like, felt like I heard something. Something's weird. She's like, we got to get rid of that piece of junk. And I'm like, all right, whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's one of those things where the more you think about it, the more you're like,
it's going to mess with you.
Yeah,
Snowballs.
So, something's definitely happening right now.
And houses creak, and then all of a sudden those creaks are someone.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I have we have a dog now too. So it's like the dog will hear something with his amazing ears and just bark randomly, and you're like, that was something. That was something. And really it's just a car going down the street maybe, but I don't know. The ghost stuff, it's always like how come there's nobody from like 2019?
Yeah, Steve Hurst has a joke about that. He's like, why do the ghosts always have a British accent? Like, why in the middle of Alabama is it not like... Yeah. He does this whole thing. I'm, of course, not going to like do his bit, but he like talks about every type of ghost there could be and then impersonates what that ghost would say. It's so funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Is he just doing that live?
Yeah, I mean,
he doesn't have it recorded or anything, does it?
He probably does on YouTube. I don't know.
We have to check that out.
He's not very. He doesn't like to be recorded at all. Like whenever someone asks us to send stuff off, he like sends stuff from like 10 years ago, and half the time they'll be like, "Do you have anything more recent?" And then he'll tell them, "I'll get something," and then just never does.
Yeah. So. It's a weird time with that stuff right now. Like you guys have to be these constant content creators in addition to trying to work on your act.
Yeah. And also watching what you say. I mean, it's hard to do both of those things. Put out as much of yourself as you can without ever saying anything wrong. Like, I don't know. You think about like Joe Rogan having 7 million hours on air, know, and then people are like, he said this. It's like, yeah, compared to the other 6,999,000 minutes he's had.
Dude, I get it. It's like Ralph Barbosa's popping off a little bit right now, right?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of
and
good
he
things
deserves
happening.
it. God, he's funny.
Yeah, super funny.
Yeah.
And he was on this podcast back in like 2019, and he was super cool about it. He sent me a message. He's like, hey man, I'm trying to pull a bunch of old stuff down. He's like, do you mind? And I was like, nah, of course not. I was like, but what's the reason? And he's like, I'm just trying to keep stuff within, I don't know, maybe like a year or two. He's like, because, he's getting a lot of attention now. And he's like, I don't want these people
combing through his...
Yeah, and like trying to make a villain out of him for something he said 3 years ago on a podcast when he was just trying to get his comedy career going. And it's like, I deleted it, but, obviously I have the file. So I was like going back and listening to it. And it's like, there's nothing that could have been negative. Mm-hmm. But it's like, he's in his early 20s. He's getting success. He's worked really hard for it. And it's like, man, I would hate to be the podcast if there was some little thing in there that fucked him over, and like ruined shit because people are so petty right now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like nobody has the ability to go like, oh, well, he was younger then and thought differently and now he's evolved into a different person. Like if he did say something crazy, which he didn't,
Right.
Anybody who's ever met Ralph, he's not that guy.
Not at all.
No,
he's such a nice guy.
Super nice.
I almost wore his shirt tonight. I was like... Yeah, it was between his shirt, Colton Jones' shirt, and then Trayvon Diggs Cowboys. I was like, I'll do
How does it feel for you when you see people in your scene, having stuff like that happen to them? Like, what's your first...
Like getting taken down, or like him being on HBO Latino? Or?
Yeah. Like when you hear like, shit, Ralph's going to be on HBO.
Yeah.
Or, like Pung.
It depends on the person, man. Because, Ralph, I'm like, fuck yeah, he deserves that. Mm-hmm. But then there are some people who, of course, I'm not going to name right now, that if something like that happened, I'd be like, man, when am I going to get lucky like that? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, just because some of it's just right place, right time, and it's not deserved. And that's just... the facts of life. You know what I mean? You can't even be mad about it. I mean,
it's such a weird thing, though, right? Because it's like, I'm always curious when comics in the scene, because I'm outside, I'm on the outer edge of what you guys are doing. And so I view it as like, oh, Ralph getting better, anybody getting better is good for your scene.
It is.
But you do, like when you're hanging out at a club, it's like you do hear some grumblings when people don't know you're listening.
Right.
Like, not about Ralph specifically, but just in general. Where it's like, why the fuck did that person get that?
And of course we're going to talk shit. I mean, like literally this is a profession, or, even profession is strong at the level we're talking about. This is a hobby that attracts even just to take the stage, every single one of us has at least a little bit of narcissism. Like to think that everyone else should shut up while we're on the mic, like that's what that attracts. So of course we're going to be petty. Of course we're going to form cliques. Of course we're going to gossip. I mean, I
and that's just the fun of it too, right?
I think where it really becomes a problem is people that are like combing through stuff, looking for stuff to. That's when it's like, dude. I mean, we were talking shit at the bar. I didn't know you were going to go to his 2019 podcast. You know what I mean? On I'm a Fan.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, yeah, it's like even me. I think about that. It's like, man, I'm making these 1-hour, 2-hour long recordings. It's like 10 years from now. How horrible am I going to sound?
True, yeah, because something that may not even be a problem now, like how dare you talk about ghosts? How dare you? Do you know what ghosts have done to this country?
We find out ghosts are real and they have feelings and we're not acknowledging them. Yeah,
right.
I mean, so I'm 37, and it's like when I grew up in high school, it's like I feel like I can't even say the word now, but like the F word about gay people, right? That was such a common...
It's coming back. No.
Let me just get a couple out real quick.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that was such a common thing to say, like any day, all day, and nobody cared.
And you would never call a gay person that. You were calling your friend that because I don't know. And everyone's made this argument before. I'm not breaking fresh ground.
No.
Yeah.
But that means there's easily, 2 or 3 things we're saying right now on this episode where it's like, ooh,
could be taken out of context.
Jeez, I can't believe they said that. And I'm just kind of waiting to see. We have a 2.5-year-old son, and it's like when he's a teenager, what is he going to be like? Jesus, y'all are still saying that? God,
Yeah.
Like, man, when you're the old person who doesn't get it anymore.
My brother, I learned when I was 23 years old that it's going to be too hard to describe. I didn't know until I was 23 years old that the word mulatto was a slur. I didn't know because my family.
I don't
used
even know
it.
that now. What's that? What's that a slur for?
It's the proper term is mixed or mixed race or whatever. But
so anyone who's mixed.
My grandparents, just being of their generation, just like like they would look for excuses to say it. You know what I mean? Like it's not, but it wasn't personal. They weren't saying like she's a terrible person. Like literally, my brother is dating a mixed person, and he said something about like, I can't remember how this came up. I was like, what's Alyssa's family like? And he was like, well, she's mulatto, because I hadn't met her at the time. Mm-hmm. She's mulatto, her dad is. And I was like, dude, I learned this lesson when I was about your age. I had no idea, but do not call them that around. Don't say it anymore. Just stop saying it. Like
that's crazy.
And it's one of those things where like it was 100,000% innocent. He wasn't, you know what I mean? Because it's not. But that's just the vocabulary, the way that progress is like, I don't know. They need to put out like a fucking weekly flyer or memoir. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that I don't know how you do it, but I think you could have a whole series. I don't know if it would just be like written or what, of like innocent racism like that, right? Because there are crazy stories like that where someone says something kind of wild and they don't realize it, and it's totally innocent, but it is like a teachable moment. but it's such a sensitive thing.
True,
It's
and then
like-
other people could learn from the
like the ability to like learn, laugh, and then move on and go like, all right, we all grew a little bit from this. Because I've never heard that word. First of all, that sounds like
you haven't heard it at all, or you hadn't
Never
heard
heard
it
it
at
all.
Oh, okay,
yeah, but it sounds fancy. Like it sounds too nice to be a slur.
I know. It sounds
the
like
way it
something you
rolls off the
order
tongue.
at a Starbucks. You
It
know what
really
I mean?
does, yeah. And it's like
2 shots of espresso.
yeah, like you could see them being like, man, you that fine mulatto chick over there. Like it sounds more complimentary than slur.
I should look into the origins of it. I don't even know why. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what made it wrong. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
either way, we're both being canceled right now for saying it a couple times.
no, because we're informing people, like
Yeah.
you just said. At least
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
and then probably a few people who listen to this will be like, I never heard that.
Yeah.
Now, there's always a chance that there's one asshole out there who listens to this and goes, I just got a new one, and now he runs around calling everyone he sees that. you
Yeah,
know?
that's just gonna happen, I guess.
Yeah, can't avoid it.
Oh my gosh. How long have you been married now?
So this marriage, 2 years.
2
It'll
years.
be 3. Oh yeah, it was just 2 years this past May. We went to Cancun to celebrate.
I'm always curious. This is what I'm hoping is my only marriage. It's my
Nice.
first marriage. And
How old were you when you got married?
we were older. So how long have we been married now? I think we're going on our 4th or 5th year at the moment. And we were both, early to mid 30s. She's younger than me by like a year and a half.
Gotcha.
And so we already we had a lot of stuff figured out. We dated when we were young, separated, and then got back together. So we knew each other. So it's kind of like, honestly, she's from Mesquite. I'm from like a really small town. So it's like our first round of dating, it's like that might as well have been a first marriage.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because most of the people we grew up with were already married by that age, had a kid, But yeah, dating her, separating, and then getting married again made me realize just how easy it is for people to get divorced when they get married younger. Because you don't know,
100%.
you barely know yourself.
It was my high school sweetheart.
Yeah,
I started
exactly.
dating her when I was 16. We got married at 18, and
Exactly.
then officially divorced at like 27, I think.
Yeah, it's wild.
26.
It's wild. And so it always makes me wonder, like, when you're going into a second marriage, are you like on the lookout? Are you worried? Are you like, why the fuck am I doing this again? Or like, do you get in your own head just because you had a previous bad experience like that?
Yes, 100%. And also, it's important to mention that the house that we bought together, I bought using the VA loan, which has a lot of advantages, and you don't have to have a down payment, and the interest rate is incredibly low, and there's like all these benefits to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would have gotten married as fast as we did if the VA loan didn't require us to be married for her income to count towards buying the house. So we had kind of a realistic talk about it. Like, listen, I really love you. I really think that we would probably get married one day. Do you want to do this now? And then we can use this dope ass benefit that we have. And I'm so glad we did, because we're literally paying we have a larger house with more land, and we're paying like $300 or $400 less per month than we were to rent. So, and renting is such a scam, and we did it at the right time. We got it in October, like right before, like our equity has gone up like $60,000, $70,000 since or not equity, the value of the home.
Yeah, you're right. The equity.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We did it at the right time. I'm not at all regretful. I think that it was gonna happen eventually. Really love her. We really just have so much better of a connection than my first wife, and. Like I said, the first wife, we got married. It sucks that both of these are like transactional things, but the first one was like, listen, I'm joining the Army. We either have to break up or we can get married. They're going to pay me more. I get to live off post. I'm not getting my room inspected all the time. There's all these things. And I don't know. We just weren't nearly as compatible and I actually think, like, sometimes I call the first wife my starter wife. And I think that's kind of accurate, because in some ways it's like I knew what to look for in what wasn't compatible. And like, we lived for a while before we lived together with the second wife together before we got married, and there were some things that I could kind of look for. And like, first wife, like, perfect example, she hated when I like pointed out like flaws in the plot or foreshadowing or like made predictions or whatever. It's my current wife, and I's favorite thing to do is to be like, oh, that's definitely coming up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, We listen to everything with subtitles so that we can be giving theories to each other while we're still reading the plot that's going on. It's just, that's a stupid example, but like
no, it's a perfect example because that either brings you together or it drives you fucking nuts.
Yeah,
and it makes you just hate that person.
And pet peeves that she has that annoy me are so few and far between. Like there's a few of them, but it's like I'm racking my brain right now to think of them. And First Life, like I said, just not compatible. It was all the cliche shit, like putting toilet paper on the toilet paper roll, and I didn't twist my toothpaste the right way, and I left. You know what I mean? Like, just
it is crazy. Like I never imagined how many cliches there really were for marriage that are 100% true. It's wild, man. Because I still feel like we're like we've been married for a few years now, but you're still like learning how to be married.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just constant, not lessons, because that sounds
growing together.
Yeah. It's weird. Do y'all have that thing where you're both thinking about the exact same thing?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that fucking weird?
I love it when we just look at each other. I'm sure you guys do this too. If like we're in an elevator, that's a terrible. I don't know when we're ever in an elevator.
We're in the
together.
elevator together.
But yeah, like we're checking out at a cash register or whatever, and then someone walks in, and we just look at each other, and it's like, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, that's what makes me think. Like to go back to your ghost stuff earlier, it's like maybe there is something about that energy just having. Like I do feel like her and I are slowly morphing into a similar person somehow. It's real strange. It's hard to describe, but
I love it personally. Does it scare you? Does it make you feel like you're losing your individuality? Or
I don't care about that. Her and I we're always good, and the biggest thing that's been challenging is putting a kid into it. Because it's like right when we kind of nailed down how our relationship was working, now you're putting in a new dynamic. And that's been really hard to just, like, both of you start losing your identity a little bit because you're becoming parents. So trying to figure out how to still keep your identities and then your relationship while making sure he's getting everything he needs, that's been really tricky. So that's been...
And then the stress of losing sleep and...
Yeah, I mean, the sleep was bad for 6 months, right? And my wife will be like, if she were here right now, she would be talking about me. She'd be like, I wanted to fucking kill him. Like, she won't even like be shy about it.
Because you slept through stuff, or
no? It's just
in general.
It was just harder for her, Like, she was doing the majority of the feedings because she's trying to breastfeed, and like, it's like you both don't know what you're doing. You're both sleep deprived, and you both think your idea is the better idea, and it just starts compounding. Yeah. So now it's just like the smallest little thing, and you're just like, I'm gonna fucking take care of it. I'm gonna take care of it, okay? And it's like, don't talk to me like that. You just take care of the shit, And it's like it just goes and goes and goes, and then an hour will go by, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm just tired.
Yeah,
I'm tired. We're tired.
And you realize you overreacted or whatever.
Yeah, but that first like 6 months, the baby's up like maybe every 2 or 3 hours. So you're just not getting sleep, I mean, it's true, like, it's a torture tactic, right? Sleep deprivation, and that's what you're getting.
Yeah, that's funny to put it that way.
I mean, that's what it is. It's like, if you had been captured in the military, they might sleep deprive you, and it would work. It would crack. And, it was wild. Now he's 2.5, so it's a lot better, but it's still, like, you just have to schedule things differently because it's like now there's like a daycare pickup, and you got to schedule stuff around when he's going to go to sleep because at the end of the day, it's not just a, like a task. Like you still miss your son when you don't see him. So you still like, you want to be there, but you got to get all this other shit done. So just balancing that stuff because if you leave him to go do the other shit, you're like, oh man, I miss him. He did that cool thing and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And it's weird. So all the parents I've talked to that have more experience than me, they're like, yeah.
Are you guys going to do it again?
I don't know. I told her I'll give you 2, maximum of 2. You let me know.
And then I'm getting snipped. That's
when we were dating, I told her I was like, I could see a happy life with 0 to 2. You can talk pros and cons all around. I could have no kids, 1 kid or 2.
Yeah.
We're
newly pregnant, by the way.
Hey,
I haven't even made Facebook announcements. Families know. Yeah.
Wow.
Families know.
Oh man. Well, am I freaking you out right now? Then I don't mean to.
No. It's cool. And one thing that I was just about to say is that I'm going to school full time for. I get GI Bill money to go to school, so like I have a full set of classes, but that's it. She's at work all day, so I'm kind of like just seeing myself as moving into a stay-at-home daddy role. And I'm curious if you think it's realistic that I'll be able to just like, well, she's at work, so I'm going to stay up all day with the baby and all night with the baby, or do you think it's like, nah, dude, that's not like you think that's going to work, but then 3 weeks in, you're going to be like, come on, you could help out a little bit. I mean.
So wait, you're saying you want to take on a stay-at-home daddy role while she's working?
Yeah, she's working at a plumbing company.
I think if you can do it, if y'all can swing it financially, it doesn't put any stress on you, I think it's the smart move.
Yeah.
For many, like multiple things. One, it's going to, she's going to be stressed out post-baby no matter what, right? Because like postpartum depression's a real thing. A lot of women get it. So she's going to be dealing with her own issues of like, here's my hormones and thoughts after having a baby, and just trying to, like, your whole life changes, boom. And so everybody handles that differently. And so if she's having a hard time, with postpartum stuff and you're doing all that extra, that's going to be super helpful. And then also, like, man, you're going to get so much time with your kid right at the start. And that like from 0 to like 1 year old, maybe, like, it just goes so quick.
Yeah.
And it's like they just start getting so much bigger, so much faster. So you're going to get to soak in as much of that time as you can. That's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I think
I'm looking forward to it. I'm
yeah,
pretty excited.
it's going to suck, but it'll be really cool at the same time. And but you were in the military. You did boot camp and shit, right? I mean, you can figure this out.
I don't sleep much anyways. I know that's probably what everyone says. It's like, no, it's different when you literally can't sleep, but I'm good on low sleep.
Just talk to as many people that have kids already that aren't full of shit. The ones who aren't like, it's going to be the happiest moment
of life.
Like, fuck those people. Find people who give you the real stuff, and then you'll see, like, oh, okay, it's not too bad,
Right.
Honestly, man, Ralph, when he was on the podcast, he was talking to me because he's so much younger than me, but he had a kid before me, and so it was kind of weird. You're talking to this younger person about like this sage child advice, and he was giving me stuff about that too. And when my wife was pregnant, he was on the show, and sure enough, like a bunch of the stuff. The one thing I remember is. He said he kept getting advice like, you sleep when the baby sleeps. And he's like, cool, am I going to do the dishes when the baby does the dishes and laundry when the baby does the laundry? And, he's like, that's full of shit. He's like, when the baby's sleeping, you're trying to get all this other shit done.
Right.
And, he was dead on, man, dead on. But it gets fun really quick. Like, once they start doing stuff, then you start becoming an annoying parent where, it's like they roll over and you're like, I'm pretty sure he's a genius. Did you see, like, he's definitely going to test up higher than everyone. That's fucking, what are we at, 4 months? 4 months? Did you see that? Like, and yeah, I mean, I think if you could stay at home, that'd be badass. But are you doing comedy pretty much full time right now?
Well, I have side hustles, and
you have no W-2 job currently,
right?
Yeah,
just the all-time school, and then I get disability money from the Army, so that definitely helps out, and that'll actually go up slightly with the kid. But
I think you can do it fine then.
Yeah.
I think what you'll have trouble with is balancing. Like, you're going to try to do comedy in the evenings, and then come home and you won't be able to sleep in. So it'll be like, all right, guys, did my set, had fun, go home.
Gotta go.
Yeah. Like, balancing that. But, there's tons
I've watched that with Steve.
Yeah, there's tons of comics that do that already.
Not Steve Hurst, Steve Gamble.
Steve Gamble.
Yeah. Because he has a 10-year-old, but he started doing comedy 4 or 5 years ago, and then now he has like a 6-month-old, and he's going through that now. Like, we've stopped seeing him for a while, and he's like, I want to, I'm just exhausted. So.
Dude, that's a great example. Yeah. Everybody figures it out. I just remind myself there's fucking morons out there who can do it.
Right.
So you're going to be fine.
Man, Devin and I were talking about, what was the thing? It was like she wanted to get sunny side up eggs at Cracker Barrel the other day. And she was like Googling, can I have a baby? I was like, do you think cavemen ever Googled, can I eat sunny side up eggs? For like millions of years, it was fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure your mom smoked while you were in the womb. I don't think
First of all, you guys are already an old fucking couple eating at Cracker Barrel.
We're practicing.
Yeah. Dude, that's exciting. How far along is she?
Only 8 weeks, I think. 9 weeks. Yeah.
That's brand new.
On September 9th is when we get our official due date. And then, it is kind of new. And I know a lot of people say, like, don't tell anyone until you get out of the trimester. I was on 92.5, the Bo and Jim show with Steve, like week before last or something like that. And I wanted so badly to announce it there just for the sake of one day being like, son, the first time I told the world about you, I was on the radio.
Oh, instead you're on this podcast.
Kind of, yeah.
All right.
My wife was like, no, you will not. You absolutely will not do that, because we haven't even told our family yet. Now we've told our family, and she also has that burning secret inside of her. And I know you're supposed to wait until the end of the trimester after. But even like the last few weeks at open mics and stuff, people are like, how's Devin? And I'm like, let's talk about anything else.
Yeah,
I cannot keep this secret inside of me.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. I was telling Steve Gamble and Katie Gamble are the first people I told. And it's because Steve did his album recording like 2 weeks ago, which he killed, by the way, at the Dive in Denton. And I went, and he was like, where's Devin? And Katie seemed kind of upset that Devin wasn't there. And then later, afterwards, we went and, drank out. I mean, Steve doesn't drink anymore, but we were all drinking afterwards and hanging out and everything. And Katie was like, man, I haven't seen Devin in so long. I was really hoping she was going to come out tonight. And I'm drunk, and it just came out. And I went home and told Devin, and I was like, I had to. Like, she thought that she thought I killed you because she hadn't seen you in 2 months. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, and also this won't come out for a week. I'll probably get the Facebook post up by then or something.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're excited about it like that.
I'm excited. I'm scared and nervous. Like,
good. I mean,
I should be.
Normal. Yeah, that's all normal. I mean, I was pretty, like, I don't want to say freaked out, but it's just, I think the guy's side of it is very different than the woman's side of it. Just because they are having something physically happen to them. So they know a change is happening, right? Whereas us, it's like, yeah, you're pregnant.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I mean, nothing, like, you don't feel much. You don't have those things. The only time it kind of changes, or for me anyway, it's like when you saw the ultrasound, you saw heartbeat. That was a big moment.
That was really cool.
And then when you finally start getting like some kicks, like some stuff starts happening there, and
Can't wait for that.
Then you feel it, and you're like, "Oh, that's a fucking thing there." Yeah. Oh my gosh! Because even when she has a belly, like if she starts showing, until there's like movement, it doesn't really hit you, Yeah. And then I still feel like it didn't even hit me until he's like in the world here right now, And that's kind of what I always tell people is, it's like those people who are like, I had an instant connection. I knew I was a father. And I knew that this was the reason I was put here on this
You're
earth.
saying that's lame, but it happened to you?
No.
Oh, no.
I'm saying, like, fuck those people.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Because for me, it was just like, man, there's a baby here. Hey, like, and like, it still takes like, a couple days, maybe a week or so for you to kind of like, you have nothing like. My son was literally just kind of looking at me. It's like he just got shot out of a womb. His whole environment changed. Everything's bright now. And then some dude's just holding him, and he's kind of heard my voice over the last few months in the womb, And so it's like the two of you are kind of just like getting used to each other, I guess, is maybe a good way to say it. Whereas him and her, it's like they have this bond.
Right.
That was his
like a chemical,
life force.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it took, a couple days of like, oh, okay, yeah, this is my son, and it's like really sunk in deep. And so I always tell people, it's like, if it doesn't hit you immediately, I think that's probably normal.
Don't panic.
Yeah. Like those people are like, I didn't feel anything. Am I a horrible parent? It's like, nah, I think you're just a human being, and like that was some crazy shit that just went down.
And also maybe all those other people are lying.
I think they're just lying, man. Nowadays with social media and everything, everybody wants that post and
right.
that, it's like you said, that's our version of like, give it up for the troops, like that's our life.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
By the way, when people find out you're in military and you get the like, thank you for your service, like, I always wonder, are people like, yes, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, I'm here to just talk to you about getting new tires on my car, right?
Yeah.
Or do you genuinely like, does it hit you each time? Like, yeah.
I go through phases like everything else in my life. And I mean, I don't know. There are some days where I will ask for a military discount because that 10% is nice. And then there's other days where I'm paying $1,400 for a car repair or something. And I'm like, I don't want to fucking go through the, you guys have a military discount? I don't want to brag, but I did kind of serve this country. You know what I mean? Like
Afghanistan.
It just depends. I don't know if you've ever seen me do the joke, but on stage I used to do a joke. It was the only military joke I had. And basically, before that, I would ask people like, is there anyone in the audience that served this country? Or no. Is there anyone in the audience that... Basically, I was making sure there were no cops in the audience. And then I would say like, all right, so I still sell weed to my ex-wife. Current wife hates it, blah, blah, blah. Then...
Now, you do that on your... you've got something on YouTube right now that does that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a 420 show, so I definitely got it in for that one at the Edison Improv. And... where was I going with that? Oh,
we're talking about the thank you for your service, military discount.
Yeah, and on stage, like multiple times when I did that joke to make sure there were no cops in the audience, which is part of the joke anyways. It's not like it's like a real strategy. Like multiple times cops have come up to me afterwards and been like, hey, I'm a cop, by the way. I just like, we're not the type to raise our hand if you ask. It's like, yeah, I know. It's just a joke. But anyways, like multiple times, it's always the wife. It's never the guy. But there's always a wife that's like, he did. And I'm like, okay, were you an EMT or firefighter or policeman? And he's like, I was in the Marines. And there's like this look on his face like, I really wish she would not do that to me. You know what I mean? But and then I'll follow that up with a joke like, oh, well, I served too, but I hate talking about it on stage because people always come up to me afterwards and say like, thank you so much for your service. And I'm like, man, I've paid off like a few cars, like I got the VA loan, GI Bill, like I'm getting like if anything, I should be saying thank you for your tax dollars. And that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like a weird, I don't want to call it guilt, but like I benefited so much from having joined. I grew up, I paid a lot of bills, I got a lot of money done, I learned a lot about life. You know, I was an NCO. I was an E5 the month before I turned 21. So I was in charge of other people before I could drink. You know what I mean? Like I feel like asking for people to or bragging about it or wearing Army shirts or having a bumper sticker that says U.S. Army or having a license plate that says disabled veteran, all that kind of stuff is just kind of like sad in a way because it's like no one does that if they worked at Home Depot or Chick-fil-A or like that's a job and you can be grateful for what you learned from it, but it just doesn't fit my personality type to be bragging for it or bragging about it or looking for handouts or like expecting more from people around me. You know, it's just it's awkward. So when someone says thanks for your service, I think that joke came from a very real place where I have like this kind of like, yeah, man, I mean, you should have done it. Like you have no idea how much I got out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And I'm sure it's different, obviously, for different people that serve and how they feel about it and all that. But, no, it's like I always think it's funny when it's that standard, you know, like someone will be having a conversation about whatever, and then this military service will come up, and the whole conversation will be interrupted to be like, "Hey, thank you for your service out there." And it's like, you know, and then boom, back in the conversation. And I'm always just like, "Huh, that's weird." And like I know it's probably a shitty way to think, but I always think to myself like, that could have been a terrible person, like in the military. Like they might have just been horrible, and everybody hated them in the military, and maybe their service was shitty.
Yeah, I'm 80% sure. I'm 80% sure that Steve Hurst and I got roofied by some firefighters in Mishawaka, Indiana, and literally every time since then that I say, "Are there any EMTs or firefighters or policemen in the audience?" I just think like, doesn't fucking mean you're a good person. Like,
you know, that's just what firefighters do, man. Like, save lives, roofie a few people.
Well, they earned it. They earned it.
They can do it, man. If you run into flames, you're allowed a couple wild nights, okay?
Yeah, that's so true, though. I think Doug Stanhope has a great joke about that, talking about like how many bad people are in the military. It doesn't just erase everything that you are because of...
Yeah. Do you get a lot of other military people wanting to like military chat it up, or they?
Sometimes, yeah. And I don't mind that as much. Like the camaraderie. There's a lot of comics. You know what I mean? Like, oh my god, now I'm blanking. John Moore, John Brown.
I was gonna say, wasn't John Brown cracks me up because it's just like, you were in the military.
LT. I mean, there are so many military veteran comics, and I do feel a little camaraderie with them because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just like an unspoken. I mean, even like MJ Moody, I'm pretty sure like retired from the Air Force. He went a totally different route than me. It wasn't 6 years and then fuck this shit, I don't like waking up early, I'm out. Like he dedicated his fucking life to it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if we're at the bar, I still feel like there's kind of an unspoken like we know stuff that these people don't know.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. It's also crazy too, like that was only 6 years of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you've been alive long enough now that 6 years is a small portion.
Right.
But it's going to be always a defining thing.
Yeah. It was only like a year and a half, 2 years ago that I hit the point where I had spent more time as an adult not in the military than time as an adult in the military.
Yeah. Did you ever consider making a career out of it?
No, I think when I went in, the plan was to become an air traffic controller, get out and do that in the real world. And then while I was in, I realized I didn't like air traffic control, and I didn't really like waking up early and stuff like that. So, no, I don't think I ever really planned on. That's something that some of my family has done. Most of the men in my family have been in almost all of them, except for my cousin.
So is that where the idea came from originally?
It was really that not going to college and becoming an air traffic controller thing. But sure, my mom and grandmother and everyone else was like, oh, just like the rest of the men in the family. You know what I mean? And I'll just go with that. It's fine.
I always feel super unpatriotic.
Yeah.
Because I'm already thinking about, like my thought process in it all. So I graduated high school in 2003. And I didn't have like a plan for college or anything at that point. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I played music. I was like, I'm going to be an artist, man. But that's like 9/11 was still pretty fresh. There's war going on and all that. And I was like, there is no way I would ever join the military and go fight for some bullshit I don't believe in. And all, I had that mindset going on. And I think I've always been so anti like authority that I think about these conversations now with my son. Like, let's say my son just loved the military. But in the back of my mind, something like, don't you fucking
don't be a bootlicker.
Don't you fucking but I'd have to have that real conversation with him of like, hey, you got to understand the seriousness of all this. It's not just like looking like a badass out here and all this. But it does. It makes you feel unpatriotic. Like, I think the only time I would join is if we had, like, if this Ukraine stuff somehow turned into like a World War III, I might feel like an obligation of like, I got to do something, But now I'm too old. They'll be like, we don't want you.
It's so sad that they've brainwashed as a culture. They've brainwashed us and you to the point where you feel like you have to be guilty for not risking your life for them. You know what I mean? Like, how ridiculous is that? Like, they let us have college and good health care, and we could pay for our families. And now, like, other people are like, I'm such a bad person because I didn't risk my life. I mean, this is ridiculous, isn't it?
I think you're still, you want to think you're like, you're the type of good person who would like go defend something for something that's right.
At least you're not the kind of guy that pretends like he was going to do it, but he had a bad back or something.
No.
I hate that's a thing that I hate when people come up to me and say like, yeah, man, I almost did it too, but turns out, I had this one prior. It's like, okay, so it sounds like you didn't get the job. We don't need to talk about the job anymore.
Yeah.
You know what else I hate is when people tell me about their family members that served, as if that's supposed to, my uncle was in the Air Force. Like, okay, I didn't know him. You know what I mean? He's probably stationed somewhere else. Like,
that's interesting.
Just trying to relate to you, and their thing is like, here's this person that's close to me that did what you did. No, it's so dumb.
Yeah, and that's when you look across the bar at the other person who did serve, and it's like, you're like, yeah, one of these,
one of those. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way, but I don't feel guilt, I guess, but it's just more like, I know I would never do that.
Right.
And it's like, does that make you a bad person?
Not at all. Not at all.
Depends on who you talk to, though.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of those people out there.
Anyone you talk to who says that makes you a bad person is a tool. That's the kind of guy at basic training where they were like, hey, everyone raise your hand and say why you joined. And then that guy raises his hand and is like, I joined to serve my country. And all the rest of the people in the unit are like, oh,
yeah. The other people are like, I was hoping to get a Dodge Charger. Like,
exactly.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, what do you think was what was the biggest stereotype going into that, where you thought like this is definitely going to happen, or something that you thought would happen and didn't?
Like what I thought I would experience when I went in.
Yeah,
I definitely was misled by my recruiters, which is like the classic. At 17, they gave me $19,000 in signing bonuses, and that went into a bank account, and I did well with, like making that last longer and everything. But that's the whole reason I went Army instead of Air Force. I went to the Air Force, and the Air Force said, we can't guarantee an MOS, so you may become an air traffic controller, but we can't promise it. And the Army said, you can sign, and then we will 100% guarantee you become an air traffic controller, and you're going to get all this work with all these big planes, and we actually do more air traffic control than the Air Force does, blah, 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 blah. And also we're going to give you $19,000. And at 17, I was like, oh, fuck yeah, that's a good deal. Yeah. And then I got in, and like just the difference between Army air traffic control and Air Force air traffic control is just night and day. And when you get out, even if it turned out that I didn't like air traffic control anyways, but if I wanted to get a job on the civilian side, the edge that I have over someone off the street is so small compared to the edge that someone has who did it in the Air Force and had real Air Force air traffic control experience with real jet planes and real, you know what I mean? And that was just a lie that they told me that, whatever. Like, I learned. I was 17. I got out by the time I was 23. I have plenty of time to make something of my life. It's fine. But there's a stereotype that I was definitely lied to,
Yeah. What was maybe the best unexpected thing that happened to you while you were in there? Something where you're like, man, I never thought that would be so cool, but this happened and that was great.
This is a pretty lame thing, but the camaraderie, I mean, there's probably 10 states that I know right now, tomorrow, if I get a gig in, I got a place I could stay. And just hit up a friend that is from that part of Maryland, or like in Colorado Springs. I've been to Colorado Springs like 5 or 6 times now for comedy, and I think 4 of them I stayed with my friend Spencer, and I just know him from the Army, and that it sounds so gay to say, but that brotherhood, that like family, that like, we all share something that other people don't get. And like, if anybody that I ever served with came to, well, there's one guy that, never mind. But if anybody was ever in DFW and like crashed my house, dude, of course. Yeah. Like,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's definitely understated. I don't know. The brotherhood thing sounds so lame and cliche, but it's like definitely a thing. Even with John Moore, you know what I mean? John Moore was 82nd Airborne. He was in the same unit as me, like just 6 years apart and different MOSs. So we were in different battalions, but it was like, it's very cool to just like talk to him and be like, man, you remember those days when we were running on our dens, or when we were doing those 13-mile ruck marches like out at the airfield or whatever? And like, he had those same experiences because he was in the same unit. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm rambling now.
No, that's it's a podcast. It's fascinating. It's one of those fields where like there's so many people that have done it, but it still feels like there's so many that haven't. So you're still kind of a small group, even though there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have been in it. Yeah,
it's kind of cool in my college classes because there's a GI Bill student or two in every class, and as soon as you walk in, you can just fucking smell each other. You're just like, yeah. You see the guy that's 30, and like, like he doesn't even like have the haircut. Like in a lot of cases, it's the opposite. He's got like a long ponytail, but you just know immediately, like that guy's been through some stuff.
For sure. Yeah, just a look on him. So do you get like, now that you've had that experience, when there are things going on in the world like these conflicts and stuff, do you respond to that differently now?
Kind of. And obviously we don't all agree. This is kind of like saying, do all Koreans, like military? Like for instance, when Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, my immediate thought was like, fuck yeah. Like it took, like all these presidents were saying they were going to do it, and he finally did it. And then everyone comes back and says like, well, the way that he drew out wasn't good, and a measured drawdown would have been. And at the end of the day, if he had done it the other way, and then there were attacks along the way where they were building up because they had 6 months to choose, then they would have criticized him for that. And they would have said they should have pulled out without notice so that they didn't have time to organize this huge attack that they pulled off in Bagram, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, it's like, man, hindsight's 2020. That guy did what 3 presidents in a row have said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Go him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because wasn't there like, I hate Trump. I don't like Trump at all. Yeah. But I think during his presidency, he pulled some troops out of places, right?
Yeah,
I don't remember where it was. But
I know he way pulled down on drones, which I liked. From Obama to Trump, there was a massive draw. Because that's the only thing I didn't like about Obama was how many drone strikes there were and how many innocent. And I think that what a lot of civilians, here's a good example of what you just asked. I think a lot of civilians are like, the good thing about a drone is that there's no chance that an American is going to get killed. But what they don't realize is that a bad thing about a drone is that when it fucks up and it kills someone's cousin, now that person gets radicalized, and then they put attacks on Americans that are actually over there, and then people do get killed because of that drone. It may take 5 more years, but it happens, know?
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, that's a shitty part about all that is like the Trump thing. It's like, he's pulling people out of places, and people who wanted that to happen because it's Trump doing it are like, oh, it's the wrong fucking move. And then that's what happens with Biden. And it's like, you're not going to win that, no matter what you do. It's like, I don't like Trump, but it's like he did campaign saying he was going to pull these people out of these areas and stop that. And it's like, he did it. It's like, all right, I don't fucking like you, but okay. All right, all right, we'll agree on that one, I guess.
It's impossible. What is that thing like a week ago where Biden like swore off fascism and he was like, I don't mess with Xi and he just named like the biggest dictators in the world, and everyone was like, how dare he say that? But what are you talking about? Like what America is this where like we're applauding Trump for saying that such and such dictator was cool for the way that he did a thing, and then getting mad at Biden for calling a sect of America fascist. It's like, I'm sorry, but if you're propping up fascist leaders, then you're kind of fascist. Like,
it's all weird right now.
Yeah.
I don't even,
didn't mean to get this political.
No, it's fine. Who do you think's going to run this next go round?
I don't know, man. I don't think that Biden should.
Is it going to be Trump and Biden again?
It seems like it, but he's just so old, man. It's weekend at Bernie's. He's so old, and I don't like the idea that we keep putting these old people in. Like, I think that it was really cool that Tulsi Gabbard served and is currently serving because she can get people from the right to be like, well, at least she served our country, even though she's a woman and doesn't know shit and she's only, 42 years old or whatever. I want to get back to a place where like Obama or JFK, like I want to have younger presidents. This thing where they're in their 70s and 80s is ridiculous. And they're not worried about their own future. At 70, they're like, fuck it, I'm going to die,
I really like Bernie. But if he were to even run now, I'd be like, too old, man. Too old. I love a lot of the stuff you're saying, but like, I can't be a hypocrite. It's past, man.
Right.
You had that good run. We're over it. I don't know what I want the upper age limit to be, but I do want a cap.
If you're drawing Social Security, you don't need to be making decisions. I mean, not that they're drawing Social Security, but if you're of the age where you could be drawing Social Security,
so 65.
You don't need to be making decisions. Yeah.
I think that's. I think if you're not going to let an 18-year-old run, it's fair to not let a 65-year-old.
You have to be 35, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And 35's too young. I mean, 35 was put in place when people died at 40. You know what I mean? Like
I said, I'm 37. The thought of me making those types of decisions at 35, I don't know, man. But then also, like, what age are you smart enough to do any of that shit? Because every 5 years you look back at yourself,
case by case basis,
and you look like that was a fucking moron 5 years ago.
So true.
Yeah, I would love for Tulsi Gabbard to run as, I don't know. You think she could run as an independent?
I think she has to run as a Democrat because, unfortunately, we live in a two-party system, and
But they're not gonna. They won't prop her up.
Yeah, I guess they're already eating themselves from the inside. That's what happened with Bernie and the DNC sabotaging him from the get-go.
If she went on the Democratic side, they'd throw somebody else in front of her at the last second. And I do wonder, like, I thought Bernie was going to go independent.
I kind of wish he did, but I understand why he didn't, and I respect it.
I understand, but I think somebody's got to take that leap now, and like we are going to create a third party.
A legitimate one, not
Because if it was Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, I mean, come on, that she could make that work.
She would win.
It wouldn't be easy, but she could figure it out.
You know what? The real answer to this is that I forget what they call it. It's that ranked voting system or whatever, where you don't just pick your candidate, you pick your top 5 or whatever, and you rank them.
They do that in a couple countries already, don't they?
Yeah, and most countries have like fucking 13 political parties. That's a way better way of doing it,
Yeah, but you can't bring that up because they'll just be like, well, those other countries fucking suck, don't they?
Yeah.
You're telling me to run our country like France? Get out of here.
It was so weird watching people get upset about the loan forgiveness that are literally dealing with loan. Like, I mean,
I literally have maybe $300 left on my loans, and I haven't paid it off because I'm waiting to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
But it's like if I paid that $300 off tomorrow and closed out my loans, like I'm not going to be mad that I didn't get to benefit from that.
Right.
It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah. I'm GI Bill, and it pisses me off so much when someone says like, what about all the people that serve this country to get their, free? It's like, none of us are saying anything. Stop speaking for us. Like,
yeah. Well, and I'm of the opinion that if you have a higher average intelligence, we're all going to benefit from that, right? If people who want to go to college have that access, whether it's, community college, a state school, like it doesn't need to be Harvard, just whatever you can get to. I think if overall everyone is educated in something, like if you want to be an electrician, a plumber, or you want to be, a physicist, just having that knowledge. I mean, it's like working on you were talking about working on like the radios and stuff, right? It's like even that little bit of critical thinking translates into other critical thinking later on.
Right.
It makes you a smarter person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, God, can everybody just go learn a little bit more? So you're going to get out of all these problems. That person who gets the free college might be the person who figures out how are we going to desalinate water more efficiently and cost effectively because we have droughts everywhere in the world now because of climate change.
Right.
It's like it might have just been that person. It's like you're going to miss out on that. The person who might solve a water problem
from an area where they couldn't afford it, didn't have the backing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had to,
And so it's like, it's the same argument with minimum wage being raised. It's like, what is $15 an hour? Like 30 something grand a year probably.
Yeah.
no one's buying Ferraris off that shit. Like,
right.
You know, it's like, are you really going to be like, they're out here living high on the hog on this $30,000 a year, these fuckers taking all our shit? It's like, I don't think that's going to be an issue, you know?
Right.
I mean, you don't want to do it, but
I understand their fear of that causing inflation, but it's like, I mean,
I think a lot of it though is like, but, you know, I make 20 an hour. If they make 15 flipping burgers, what does that say about me? And it's like, it says nothing about you.
Right. Yeah. Why are you thinking, why is it, it's not a comparison.
But I think we're just always competitive.
You don't
no
think
matter
that
what.
guy's allowed to make enough money to pay for his family because he doesn't have as cool of a job as you? Like, it seems like everything should just cost a little less. Like,
I think a lot of people want to, like, they'll never say it out, you know, in public, but I think they want to be better than everyone, right? Mm-hmm. I want to be more successful than that person. And if I'm really close in wage to the Chick-fil-A worker, then that means I'm a loser. And it's like, no, man, I don't think that means that at all. So I think getting past that thinking would solve a lot of the education problem. Like, that's what really people are upset about with the loans. They're like, I had to bust my ass. I'm better than you.
Right.
And it's like, you shouldn't have had to bust your ass either, man.
Are you going to have tons of angry, like, you guys are commies? Like,
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought this way, you know, all the way up to this point. That, like, that's why I liked Bernie. You know, he had a plan that his biggest problem is the same problem that, like, defund the police had, right? If you were like, I think the police are becoming a little too militaristic and maybe their budgets can sometimes get bloated and we should put a check on that and make sure we're spending every dollar in a fiscally responsible way that serves the public. People be like, absolutely. But instead you're like, defund them, take the money. And so it's a marketing issue, right? So his problem, in my opinion, was he kept saying free. We're going to have free this, free that, rather than going, no, what we're going to do is reallocate our taxes in this way, and this is how we're going to afford everything. And you're going to have, you know, certain GPAs and meet certain standards to be able to get this education paid for by the taxpayers. Then I think people would have listened, but that's kind of, you know, it's like all you can get out there is a soundbite, so you got to go, all you young people who are the largest voting demographic that doesn't vote, that we need to try to get out to the polls, we're giving you free shit.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a marketing problem.
It's sad, isn't it, that we have these 4-year terms where you don't have time to get any of the stuff you want to have done, and then you spend half of the term just trying to get reelected anyways. And that you have to do stuff like that you have to say stuff that you don't even mean just to, like, get that soundbite to get. Like, the Beto guy, I don't necessarily like him. I think he's a little too harsh, abrasive. You know, that thing where he's like, we're going to take, damn right, we're going to take your guns. It's like, bro, you just lost.
He's trying to get that news clip.
And that's what it was. He was trying to get the clip, and he's a victim of the system that we've created. I mean, I think...
You saw him storm, like... Was it Ted Cruz or somebody had a meeting after the Uvalde shooting?
Oh, that was pretty cool.
And he's like, you fucking did that. And it's like, I know.
Oh, wait, never mind. That's not what I was thinking of.
He was like, you know, basically he was saying, you know, we need gun control. He like kind of interrupted a meeting to talk about how we need gun control. And it's like.
And somebody laughed, and then he looked over and he was like, I don't think that's funny, motherfucker.
Yes.
He said,
yes.
I was like, okay, that's cool.
It's cool. And it's like, but also, I know why you're doing that. You're trying to get on a newsreel. You're trying to get some traction. And
that's the world we live in.
I know. And it's like, you have to be kind of a blowhard, you know, and that's what fucking sucks. That's what makes me like Tulsi Gabbard is she didn't seem to play that game too much.
I like Jon Stewart. It'd be cool if he ran.
Do you think he's going to run?
He always says he won't. He always says he won't. But
I'd vote for Jon Stewart in a heartbeat.
Can I just say that every time he has one of those heartfelt, we need to do this, he gets stuff done, right? But like, in a way, him saying, like, I don't want to run for office, it's too much stress, it's too much blah, blah, blah. Well, then all that other stuff you're doing is kind of blowhard just in the other direction. You know what I mean? Like, put your fucking money where your mouth is. If you know that other candidates are not doing what they should be doing, and you know that you're capable of doing it better, and you know that people will vote for you, then, like, stop having these random fucking press meetings on the lawn of the White House and run for office and actually do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the work he did with the 9/11.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I don't mean to say it was like lame or blowhard for him to do that. No. It's fantastic.
I know what you mean. Like, you're saying it as someone who admires him. Of like, you could do this.
Yeah,
you know. No, but like for people who don't know, the 9/11 first responders, a bunch of them got cancer from inhaling particulates and all this stuff while they're digging through rubble. And at one point, I don't know, five years ago maybe, they were removing their benefits somehow. I don't know all the details, but they were getting medical treatment, and then that was going to go away. And Jon Stewart was like personally going to different, you know, senators and congressmen talking about like, hey,
giving these moving speeches.
Yeah, and he
bringing
wasn't
you to tears.
He
with his
wasn't
words.
attacking them. He would come in with a couple of the 9/11 people, and he'd like schedule a meeting and be like, hey, we were trying to talk to you about this. You voted no on this bill. I don't know if you understood that this had this healthcare stuff in it, and he like slowly got them to change things.
Right.
And I think that's what you need, whether it's him or somebody else. It's like showing that ability of like, I'm going to go up and have a rational conversation. We're not here to get a, gotcha, and we're actually going to serve something, because that's my biggest complaint with both parties right now is what the fuck do y'all do?
Right.
You don't do shit. God, we're still talking about abortion. I fucking don't care about abortion.
Dude, every time Joe Biden does something bad, my grandparents text me and say, can you believe this? And I'm like, no, I can't. He sucks. I didn't say I liked him.
We were literally...
I said I didn't like Trump. Like, I had to choose between the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
Like, it's been so long since this country could just be like, I like this president. Obama was good.
Yeah.
And
they should be upset that they have these two shitty candidates, too. They should be upset that they have to deal with Biden and Trump.
And they're not because they've completely fallen into the cult brainwashing, and it's 100% cult brainwashing. And all they do is watch Fox News on full blast, and they're always telling me about how bad CNN is, and I'm like, I know.
You're like I totally agree.
Yeah,
Can you just agree that one sucks too?
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but you know what CNN said? Stop acting like just because I don't watch Fox means that I watch CNN. Like, it's sad.
My favorite phrase is both sides, right? Like the people who love CNN and the people who love Fox, right? When they're criticizing the other group, they'll be like, you just follow the money. That's where you'll get the truth.
Oh, they love that.
And it's
one.
like, yeah. So these TV shows that you like, they have advertisements. That's where the money is.
Right.
Like, so if you follow the money on the show you love, whether it's CNN or Fox, you'll see what the real root of all this
Brought
is. Which
to you
is
by Pfizer
they
or
don't,
whatever.
They don't give a shit about any of this political stuff. They want to make money, and they know they can get you riled up and make some money.
Totally.
And that's all it is. That's all it is. And it's like we've all been victim to it. It's like when the elections come around, I'll catch myself reading a fucking Facebook post or something, and then I'll be like, this fucking shit, and I'm like, wait, backspace.
Let's make sure.
You know better than this. It's not going to solve anything. But, yeah, I don't know. It's fucking weird. I don't know. I think it's going to be Trump and Biden again, and I think it's going to be depressing.
I think it'll be Camila. I think Biden will step down or have some health crisis come up. I just don't see... But you know what's funny is none of us liked Camila, and he attacked Camila, and then like that vote made my grandparents and every other conservative say, oh, they're just doing that for, what do they call that? Identity politics. They're just doing that for identity politics. And that was something that was kind of hard to argue with, because we were like, yeah, nobody liked her in the primaries, specifically because of all the shit she did with prisons in California and how she was like kind of anti her own demographic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then
she has put a ton of people in jail with either very harsh sentences or maybe didn't even commit the crime.
Yeah. And oh man, so I kind of agree with them when they're like, oh, that was an identity politics move. It's like, but just like it is sad. Like I'm probably, whether it's Biden or Camila, going to vote for them again if Trump runs conservative, just because I don't want to see him in office. Mm-hmm. But that's so sad to have to do that, knowing that I hate the two candidates. I don't necessarily hate Biden. I really like what he did with Afghanistan. I think the 10% was kind of the 10% loan forgiveness. Like, it's a step in the right direction, but it's also kind of an empty, like...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You said you were going to make it free, and then you said 10%, and you're like, all right, vote for me. 10? Is 10 good? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so many of us were like, yes, it was. It was so good, you know?
I think their move is to federally legalize marijuana, and then that's it. Game over.
I don't know.
But the problem
I can't
is,
believe that hasn't happened.
Well, they said they would,
yeah,
and they have not.
I can't believe it hasn't happened. I mean, just the amount of... It would just fix so many things.
Yeah, so many things. I heard a couple people recently... I go to these comedy shows a lot, and you'll have, headliners from out of town, but they'll be talking to some of the locals that are on the show. And, I'm just flying the wall over here, chatting with somebody else and be like, man, you know where I get some weed, get this, get that. And it's like, there's been 2 times now by 2 different people where I'm paraphrasing, of course, but basically they were like, do you trust this person? And they're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, I live in a state where it's legal, so I know what I'm getting. Mm-hmm. It's like, you don't necessarily have an ingredient list, but you know that this is a safe product because this company doesn't want to go out of business.
Right.
There's not going to be anything in there that I don't want in there. And, that's a really great point for legalization of just kind of a safety thing, that when Prohibition was going on with bourbon, it's like that's why they have
People
these.
were dropping dead. Yeah.
That's why they have these rules, because I think bourbon you can only make it in a barrel one time and then you discard the barrel, and that's why you have like I play guitar and it's like they'll make guitar amps out of like old bourbon barrels and stuff and they'll sell them up for jacked up prices. It is cool. But that's why they have all these extras, and it's because in Prohibition people would just grab like any barrel. So it's like if it held, some chemical or something in it, they went ahead and mixed the whiskey in there, and then people were like dropping dead from that. And then they set guidelines on like in order to be called bourbon whiskey, like you have to have this percentage of this percentage of that, and that's why it's bourbon whiskey, right? And that's what would happen with drugs is you would be like, to call it this type of weed, it has to meet this criteria, and so then you would know like, this is what I like. This is too strong. This is too weak. This has this in it. Oh, that gives me a headache. I don't like that. Like, it would make it more just, I feel like it would make everything safer.
Yeah. Standardized. Yeah.
Definitely. And then the flip,
regulated.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that is, I don't think many people would have predicted that you'd have all these different breweries going around, like, surviving. Like even just in Dallas, we have so many beer places that are independent beer places. That's what it's going to be for weed, right? You're going to have all these micro dispensaries that it's like, oh yeah, here's how we like to make it. We like to do this and that, and this is our special. And it's like everybody's going to kind of survive, and then you'll have huge mega companies that'll do their thing. Right. And I think it'll be a better system.
That's what all those CBD places are. That's pretty much like a known fact now. The CBD places that started popping up like 5 or 6 years ago, they're all like 100% ready to go for the day that it gets federally legalized. Like all of a sudden that sign's coming down and it's coming up THC. Like that's, investors have been investing in those like what are they called, like strip mall places, and with all the things that they need, with all the cash vaults, with all the whatever it is that they need for it to be legalized, just to have that real estate. And it's a loss for the majority of them because they invested in it 6 years ago. As much as we tell police officers that we're smoking CBD joints, they all got real weed in them, and no one's buying the CBD at these stores. So these investors have just been taking a loss for the last 5 or 6 years, waiting for. And
it just needs to happen. It's like the majority of the police don't give a shit. The majority of America doesn't give a shit. You got a small group of people who sensationalize, like I think most of it's religiously motivated, of why you shouldn't do it. And I think the average person is like, if that's your thing, that's fine, whatever. Yeah. And I think it would solve a ton of problems. I mean, me personally, it's like I would much rather, have like an edible or something in the evenings than have like Lexapro and Xanax for anxiety.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Things that you can get off of easier too. I mean,
yeah, it just seems better, And then maybe it's not. Maybe I take an edible and I'm like, oh no, that's not. This is not what I want. But you get my point. It's like if you had a regulated system where you could kind of, you don't want to say self-medicate. That sounds so stupid, but you know what I mean.
Right? Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think Oregon went a little too far when they made everything legal. That was a little wild.
Is everything actually legal there?
It's decriminalized. Yeah, I mean, if you
it's a great experiment, though.
It is a great experiment. Thank you, Oregon.
So you can get caught with heroin, and they're like, you go on your way.
I think they confiscate it. I think they confiscate it, and that's it. I could be wrong there, but I don't even think you get a ticket anymore.
I mean,
it's too much, but
it's a lot. Yeah, because on one hand, part of me really thinks like what I just said about weed would apply to everything, right? That if you legalize it and regulate it, that like cocaine, heroin, whatever you want to talk about would probably be safer.
Yeah, I think the argument
is... But it sounds fucking crazy to be like, we're legalizing heroin.
Yeah, totally. I think the argument against that is the opioid epidemic, especially like in the Northeast. I don't know if you saw that Dope Sick documentary, or not. It's not even a documentary. It's like it's like they act out what happened. I can't think of the name. Kevin Bacon? No. Kevin Costner? Kevin Costner. But anyways, like I think the problem with, I agree with you when you say regulate marijuana, but when it comes to heroin and stuff like that, I mean, that's a life-altering addiction. And all those people that were getting Oxycontin and stuff like that prescribed to them to their doctor, like as soon as that prescription run out or they had to switch doctors and the doctor didn't want to give them that or whatever, those people's lives were completely ruined and they were going to heroin and stuff that was chemically addictive. I think the best part about marijuana is that it's even less addictive than fucking alcohol is. You know what I mean? So I'm totally down for marijuana to be federally legal, but to make cocaine or heroin, that's just a completely different world.
I don't know. I mean? Still like when you say all of that, I think, Yeah, he's got a great point. But then if somebody sits in here a week from now and is like, heroin should be legal, and let me tell you why, I'll be like, yeah, you got a good point.
Yeah,
I'm
like
so
that too.
I'm still feeling it out.
I feel you.
Well, I really don't know what I think about it, because on one hand, it's like I think also like if you don't know someone that has had a negative effect, right? So like I'm sitting here talking about heroin, and then while you're telling me that, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, I had Lawrence Rosales on here who's talking about how his whole life was getting fucked up from meth. It's like it probably would have been terrible for him if meth was legal.
And the people around him, because poetically, I think what you're saying is like, I should be able to fuck up my life if I want to. Okay, that makes sense. This is a free country. You should be able to fuck up your life. But the fucking ripple effect of your coworkers having a bad day because of you, and then your kid or your cousin or your uncle or you having to steal money to get more of the thing you're addicted to. Now the person that you're stealing from is suffering. Like one of the reasons that I've never sold anything more than marijuana is because if you don't have weed for somebody, they say, shit, I'll catch you next week. If you don't have crack for someone or you try to ignore them or something, they're breaking down your doors. They're, you know what I mean?
That's
like they're robbing you. They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, man. Well, I can't wait till it is federally legal, and then you can tell me more. You can educate me more on
on the sales part,
your experience. Yeah. Listen, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah,
you're fantastic at this, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
And listening today, I hate to say it, but I had never listened to one before.
That's fine.
Mikey B's, but. First of all, your equipment is so professional and it sounds crisp. It's a very professional production. And then just your voice, you've got such a fantastic voice for it. It's like the perfect amount of grumbly. This is awesome.
I work on this voice so much. No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say I haven't got to watch you live much since pre-pandemic because, you're always in Denton, Fort Worth, out of town, somewhere else. And I'm over here in Dallas doing my snobby stuff. But I was going through your YouTube stuff and catching back up on everything. And I'm really excited to see where the next couple of years go for you.
I'm excited to start talking about the baby. I have my little, I told you I jot down notes in my digital notes section on my cell phone. I have not pregnant jokes, and then under that I have pregnant jokes, and it's the ratio is 3 jokes to 1.
Oh, I forgot to mention. The first time I ever met you, we didn't actually meet. We didn't know each other. I was at the Red Room in Hyenas, and I was standing there watching a show, and I don't know why, but you just tapped me and you had some chicken strips or something. You're like, do you want a chicken strip?
What the fuck? That's so weird.
You were full and you were like, hey man, would you like a chicken strip? I'm full. And I was like, I'm good, but thanks, man. You're like, all right, if you change your mind.
I'm deeply ashamed of that.
I thought that was a very in that moment I was like, because I knew you were a comic at that point, but I don't think I'd watched you. And I was like, well, he seems all right.
Yeah.
So right from the start, I was like, this is probably a nice guy. Anyway, what's the best place for people to follow you so that as you're doing all your shows, they can come check you out?
So my Twitter handle is at Matt McElhone. That's very hard to spell, but I'm sure that you'll put it on.
Yeah, it's all going to be linked.
Yeah, Travis is going to put it on the thing, and then from my Twitter, you can go to my Linktree, and that's got everything. That's got Instagram, and I wish I knew what my Linktree URL is, but I think it's a system of numbers or something. I wish they made it Linktree at Matt McElhone.
Yeah, just go to my page. We're going to link everything, which is at Travis Can Listen on Instagram. That's the best way to do it. And then I think you definitely need to start the Paranormal podcast with Paul Smith.
I should, shouldn't I?
You got to get on that.
I just got to stop being a lazy asshole.
Yeah. I'll follow up on it with you later. Anyway, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
The I'm a Fan of podcast, music, comedy, and more.